Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel to our live reaction and player ratings live stream following Wolverhampton Wanderers 2, Chelsea Football Club 6. What a time to be alive! What a day! Can't believe it. Yeah, who on earth could have seen that coming? I bloody certainly didn't. And after that first half, I don't think many of us did, because what an insane first half it was. Goals left, right, and centre. Obviously, bottling the lead essentially just before halftime, only for us to go on and win the second half 4-0. Utterly mental. Joao Felix debut goal. Cole Palmer is ridiculous. What did he get? 3 assists in the goal. Madueke obviously with a hat trick, especially after his Instagram shenanigans yesterday, which of course we will touch on. But my guy turned Wolves into puppies. He literally dunked on the head top. First he said that town is shit, and then he's got a hat trick against them. Like, it doesn't get more main character than that. Do you know what I mean? Like, this, I love it. I love a shit house in football when they also then go into back it up. Like, there's nothing better than that. Do you know what I mean? If he had a stinker today and we lost 3-0, Madueke yesterday would have looked very silly. Now he looks like an absolute goat. So, you know, you've got to absolutely back it. I'm joined by 2 absolutely wonderful guests. Because I haven't seen Bertram in a hot minute, I will start with Bertram. First of all, thank you, man, for coming back on. I appreciate it very, very much. You are usually ever the optimist, but I'm not sure even you saw a 6-2 win coming. I mean, thoughts? Pretty unbelievable, that. I'll take it.
Very, very happy. Yeah, I think after the first half, you could see it was very end to end. So predicting some more goals in the second half was quite easy. But I think even a 6-2 was very impressive. Even after Noni scored the second goal, I think it was very impressive. I think we also had pretty much closed up the game there. But yeah, very happy today. I think for the team to come out, first half really, really not, play well. Second best in, pretty much every facet of the game. Physically, we weren't very good. We got dominated. If anything, Wolves were pretty much the better team, but, somehow come in at 2-2, pretty much, come in 2-1. But, our set piece coach has spent evidently all the time of the offensive set pieces and not done anything about the defensive set pieces. But, I think very, very impressed to come out, and I think it speaks volumes to the team as well, because I think these previous couple of years when you've seen this first half, you know it'd be followed up by a worse second half. But coming out, I think especially a player, we'll come on to him later, but like Caicedo, who played a terrible terrible first half, pretty much at fault for some of the goals, to come out getting smashed, playing well, pretty much giving, what was it, almost the second assist on 2 goals, I think was very, very impressive. So I think, yeah, overall very positive for this result today. And scoring 6 away at Wolves, you can't pretty much, can't be negative, can you?
No, exactly. And especially, let's not forget, last season, Wolves did the double on us, beat us home and away. So, and we've, in general, for the last few years, Wolves, like the modern year, has kind of been a bit of a bogey ground for us. Like, almost kind of like the new Newcastle or Everton for us, weirdly. Not that we get great results at Newcastle and Everton still, but we've just been terrible the last few years. So
we haven't won there for like 5 years, I think, pretty much.
Exactly, and Bertram remembers results. So if Bertram tells us that, it's probably right. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I absolutely agree. The only, well, not the thing I disagree with, because you're right, we weren't great. Well, we were terrible in the first half. I'm not 1,000% sure if I necessarily agree the Wolves are so much better. But even in the first half, obviously, Jackson gave us the lead super early in the game. And then Palmer had a huge chance to make it 2-0. If he makes it 2-0 there, probably game put to bed already. Maybe not, because we know us and we like to, let teams back into games. But still, if it's 2-0 that early, the game's probably a bit different. Instead, they score. Sure, we score again. Bottle it again before halftime. And Ollie, I'll come to you. First of all, speak to me about that first half, but even more so, speak to me about that second half, because it was beautiful. I mean, obviously, Wolves didn't defend particularly well, made it a bit too simple in transition moments and stuff. But boy, some of that attacking, especially that Joao Felix goal, the pass and play, how quickly we moved across the pitch and then how nicely we finished it. It was unbelievable. I can't remember the last time I say that. I probably said that on a few occasions last year, because sure, we conceded a lot, but we also scored a lot last year. But boy, did we play some nice football that second half, man.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, hi Loz, hi chat. Hope you're all well. Hi Bertram as well. Hope you're good, mate. Yeah, my God, that was some dynamite football, wasn't it? In the first half, it was very much end to end. A lot of the shades of the things we were seeing last season under Pochettino. The Man City 4-4 comes to mind. It was that kind of chaotic kind of game. And then something happened when we went in at halftime. Maresca switched a few things around, maybe slightly just tweaked a few bits, and and we came out and absolutely blew them apart, didn't we? We were sensational on the attack. Yeah, still a few things out of play that we could probably improve on, but I mean, for game week 2 of the Premier League to go out and smash your opponent 6-2, whilst having a new manager and all the players are still learning and getting on with this stuff, it's really nice to see it. I think we all really needed this win.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to get a good, big, convincing win over a team where we've struggled a lot recently.
Exactly. No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, for the fan base, for the team, for the way we are looked at in the media. I mean, supposedly Jamie O'Hara said post-match that we could be going for the title. I mean, to be honest, Ollie, you've said it under your name. We're doing a title judge.
Yeah, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but
of course. And I'm
two.
not sure quite how seriously Jamie O'Hara is about saying, I don't usually pay any attention to anything Jamie O'Hara has to say. So, I can't now just that because he said something positive about us for once, now say, look at what he said. But even still, it's changed the discourse about us drastically. Now, obviously, there's still about a week left of the transfer window, so everything could change again, depending on who we sell. Imagine we now still sell Noni Madueke. Imagine that. I mean,
yeah, that's another 20 million you can slap on top of his value now.
Well, yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it. But he's also added points to our table. It'd be quite good if we keep those points and keep them going. But yeah, I am very, very happy. Let's talk about the lineup, shall we? Because a couple of interesting bits, couple of things that didn't really surprise me. Obviously, Robert Sanchez was back in goal after Philip Jorgensen played in the Conference League qualification against Servette. Unfortunately, I was busy, guys, on Thursday evening, so I was not able to stream. Will not be able to stream this Thursday again after as well, unfortunately. But after that, we're back on the grind. So Sanchez back in goal. Not sure I fully backed it. Conceded 2 goals again. Can we, at some point, please just play Jorgensen all the time? But hey, not too much negativity today. Otherwise, Gusto, Fofana, Colby, Cucurella, the same back 4 as we had last week. Caicedo and Enzo, who's missing? Romeo, Lavia. Supposedly some sort of small hamstring injury. Hopefully, it truly is only small because, in particular, in the first half, it looked like without Romeo Lavia, we don't even know how to spell the word midfield. So that was a bit concerning. Yeah, like literally, it was all over the place. Madueke is finally getting his first start of the season. I mean, if he didn't start again today, I would have been like, what on earth is happening? After, obviously coming on against Servette on Thursday and, helping us get that win. Palmer is a number 10 this time, one of the 2 10s, but on the starting sheet, I guess a 4-2-3-1 normal number 10. Mudryk, for me, the biggest surprise that he kept his place in the team. Not like I didn't think he was good against Everett. I didn't think he was as bad as some people made it out. But I guess part of the situation was Pedro Neto played his first 60 minutes, since February when we played against Servette on Thursday, so he wasn't ready to start again. Joao Felix probably also not quite ready to start again. And, we got rid of Raheem Sterling. So who else are you going to start on the left other than Mudryk, I guess? Could have done Nkunku, but we tried that last week and saw that wasn't good. And also Nkunku started the last 2 games. You want to rotate it up a bit. And, of course, Nicolas Jackson up top. Bertram, what did you make of the team? Any surprises for you in there? Obviously, a bit disappointing with Romeo Lavia, but otherwise, I guess Mudryk is the one main surprise, maybe.
Yeah, I was happy to see both Palmer and Madueke in because I don't really think Palmer was that influential when we played City on the right wing. So having that, almost front 4, I thought was I was very happy to see. I think Mudryk, his inclusion kind of shows, you could call it an agenda or what you want, but there was a lot of discourse on Twitter after the game about how bad he was. And I watched, the game on Dodgy Stream, which sometimes cut out, so I didn't see the whole thing. But I didn't think he was that bad. Of course, there are things you can work on, but I think it was more of a Mudryk performance where he does, 10 things and 2 of them works out, but then they really did work out. So I thought he was all right. I think him getting, another start shows that his game wasn't that catastrophic. But other than that, I was just very happy when you look throughout this team sheet, you just see a team full of quality. Even I think the starting 11, you can make a case that they're all very, very good players. You look at the bench as well, having, the likes of Joao Felix and Nkunku, Neto, who we saw come on. I think I'm just very happy to have a team, filled with both different profiles and a lot of quality as well. But I think, the disclusion of Lavia really didn't, instill us with confidence because he's, arguably been our best player these last couple of games. So I think other than that, that's pretty much what you'd expect. But very, very happy to see Madueke start because he deserved it.
100%. Now, Ollie, I'll come to you. Was Mudryk the one big surprise for you in that team? Was there anything else that kind of surprised you? Again, outside of the obvious, obviously, Lavia not being there and us being like, where on earth is he? Because like Bertram said, he's with preseason and even against City being our best player for the most part, I would argue.
I think given the personnel available and the wingers that we actually had available on that left hand side, like you said, Neto probably wasn't ready to play another 90, or at least not a full 90. Felix probably wasn't quite ready for it. So that kind of just left Mudryk really. I know I could have played Tyreek George or whatever, but Mudryk's confidence is already low. You don't need someone. You don't need like an 18-year-old or whatever getting in ahead of you to make that even worse. I didn't think he was absolutely terrible either. Well, I'm sure we'll get to that in the player rating. Like, I thought he was probably the worst player today, but we had a good performance, so I don't know that maybe he was just average. But other than that, because I figured Lavia would probably miss out, I thought that was one of the strongest teams we could have put out in terms of personnel, and it really showed it, especially in the second half.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, on current form, without injury, I would argue that our strongest team does include Lavia. But in terms of names, you have a point. One interesting bit I do want to mention is Lavia out, and look at the bench. There's not a single defensive midfielder on there. Now, Renato Vega obviously can be a DM. We haven't seen him used as that, except from inverting from left back at Chelsea yet. So a bit of time to tell about what exactly he's going to be like in that position. But even if you want to say Vega was that option, but Vega was also the left back option. So say we needed one in both, we didn't have that available. So without taking anything into too negative, I don't really understand why we loaned out Andre Santos and Dugo Chukwu. And now as soon as we have one injury in defensive midfield, we're kind of light there. I like when you have 45 players registered to your club, I don't see how you can end up being light in a position. Like that's just, again, terrible squad management, I guess. But hey, we won 6-2, so today is not the day to complain about that. But obviously,
if I could I jump in very quickly?
Please do, please.
I think as if we're still on the topic of the lineup, I think we've all seen the Maresca interviews. We are all very impressed with what he says. He's pretty obvious what he's talking about when he says that you have to work very hard both in training and during the games that he's talking about Madueke. And I think his inclusion this early into the season is a very good sign from Maresca as well to both be open to very short term improvements that he's going to play in, because last season we were crying out for a player like him, and when he finally came into the team around December time, he was very good. So I think it's just very positive to see Maresca being able and being confident enough to play a player like Madueke this early on when he's critiqued him publicly out. So I thought that was very positive. Just quickly.
No, very good, very, very good. Yeah, like I say, I think we could do with having another defensive midfielder around, but hey, focusing on the positive, I will just bring up the kind of final score picture from Chelsea. Very much deserves to be Noni Madueke. Let's quickly talk through the game before we get into the player ratings. Obviously, we took the lead after 2 minutes already through Nicolas Jackson from a corner. It must have taken some sort of flick on from an opponent because there's no official assist to the goal. But yeah, I mean, that was a fantastic start. We should have not long after made it 2-0 already. But let's focus on that first half. Ollie, you touched on it earlier already, but it was kind of insanely end-to-end, and it almost felt like someone had time traveled us back into last season, because it felt literally like your most standard everyday Pochettino game of last season, where it was all end-to-end. We had big chances, could defend anything. It was just a bit crazy. Like I said earlier to Bertram, we could have made it 2-0 before they equalized in the 27th minute. But what did you make of it being quite so end-to-end? Now, obviously, we did something. We'll talk about that in a minute to change it and make it better in the second half. But was that particularly concerning for you? What did you make of how end-to-end that first half was?
It was certainly somewhat of a concern, because it just looked like every time that we gave Wolves the ball, they were like just sprinting through our midfield. Like a lot of our issues in the first half, in my opinion, are due to just having a midfield that was just too open, and we just gave them far too much space to be able to run into it on the counter. Obviously, like you mentioned, we fixed that. It was also really frustrating because it felt like we just couldn't keep the ball out of our net. Like we went 1-0 up, and then they pegged us back, and then they pegged us back to 2-2. So it's just like, come on, man, we need a little bit of luck here. It felt a little bit like that, a little bit sort of like a bit unlucky that we were where we were, but at the same time we made mistakes leading to the goals as well. So very, very much shade to last season, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's to some extent, I'm like, I get it. Very young team. Obviously, we don't have this manager for that long, so it's very easy to fall into old habits, old patterns. But is that what you felt was happening in the first half, Bertram? That it was kind of falling into patterns from last season, or was it still part of adapting to the new style, not always being sure where you need to be, how you need to, keep your rest defense? But it wasn't even just that. I just feel like we just missed too many tackles when higher up the pitch in midfield, and obviously our front pressing line, we just let them go through so easily. But because we tried to be so aggressive, once they got past us, they just had so much space in the wide areas that from that point onwards, that's why, as much as we will probably give the defenders fairly low ratings, in particular the centre backs, but I feel like it was very difficult task for them from that point onwards. Like once they get through our midfield and then they're like the Wolves wingers get the ball in dangerous areas out wide, it's difficult for the centre backs to do much about that because you need to come out to pressure them. But if you come out, that leaves more gaps in the middle. That means the cross for them is then easier to find a teammate of theirs. So where did you see the problem? Is it a case of like old patterns, or is it just still adapting to the new style of the manager? How do you explain that first time? Because we weren't like awful. It was still 2-2 and could have easily been a bit of a better result if we just didn't concede that silly goal at the end or Palmer made it 2-0. But the difference between the first half and the second half, like if the second half was just similar, I probably wouldn't talk quite this much about it. But the fact that we managed to make it so much better makes me wonder even more why the first half was the way it was, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think I might disagree when you say the first half wasn't that bad, because I thought it was atrocious. I thought we were very lucky to come in at the break drawing. I think there are a lot of different, facets to it. I think firstly, credit to Wolves. They really had a good game plan for this game. I think we got overrun physically in midfield. They pressed it looked like a diamond pretty much. And I think a lot of it is down to, as you said, both, us having to learn the system, Gusto having to invert. This is only his second Premier League game, realistically, where he has to invert. And personally, I don't think that's where he's best, but I think he put in a very solid display of the second half. I think a lot of Wolves' chances came from exploiting that, our left-hand side, from where Gusto was meant to go up. Because if you look at both of the goals, it's Wesley Fofana not really understanding the spaces where he has to defend. So I would say that, comes down to the fact that, we also do need to learn our positions. But I think a part of it is just, tactically very well set up from Wolves. But I think you have to credit Maresca here as well for, coming into halftime, being able to change some things up. I think you have to look at the individual performances as well of a Caicedo, for example, who really stepped up during the second half. You can see how important he is for our play, because when he, showed up, we were miles better. We were able to play out of their press and create chances, which we did time and time again. So I think a lot of it is both down to the fact that tactically from Wolves, very well played, good again from Maresca tactically, and just individual players like a Caicedo stepping up.
Did you feel that there was a particular tactical change that happened at halftime? And please, also, I want the chat to get involved in this as well, because I'll be honest, I was at the same time also watching the F1, so maybe I didn't clog all the tactical intricacies. Because I'm curious, was it for you, and I'm now asking you, Bertram, but please, like I say, the chat, get involved with your thoughts on that question as well. Was it a tactical change that helped us improve in the second half, or was it just, like you touched on it in Caicedo's case, players stepping up? Obviously, it can be a mix of the two, I'm very aware, but I'm asking, was it more just players stepping up, or did you see a particular change that we made?
I didn't see, maybe Ollie saw it differently, but I didn't see any overwhelming tactical changes. Personally, I think I just saw, Caicedo getting the ball in the same positions, but in a way he just came out a transformed player and was able to, pass it more assured and pass it out. I think you can't overlook the fact that Pedro Neto came on. I think someone who's smarter with football and maybe has a tactical degree or something will have a good explanation on it. But perhaps that played a difference in how we were able to play it out if there was another player, another threat on that left hand side. But in general, I think when I watched it, I kind of just saw the fact that Caicedo stepped up and we were able to play out of the press from then on. But I haven't really seen anything. Maybe Ollie's seen it differently.
Yeah, I will ask Ollie. I also did text Connor if he has something or not. But let's see
well,
when Connor has a moment to reply. Ollie, did you see a tactical change, or did you feel it was more just players stepping up and basically getting a bit of a bollocking at halftime?
A mix of both, I think. I think, in a way, there was almost a psychological aspect of bringing Pedro Neto on, because obviously Wolves know what he can do because we bought him from them. So to a certain degree, they were always going to have a man on him because they know he's good. Whereas I think maybe they might think Mudrik's not as good, so they don't need to mark him quite as closely. That drags a man out of the way. From there, you've got a bit more space. I think generally speaking, though, as well, tactically, I think Neto did something a little different to Mudrik as well, where he dropped really, really deep to help with the build-up at times, I thought. He was always there, like almost playing as like the left fullback. And that often helped us. We'd shift it left to right, then he'd get the ball, it would go back. And then from there, we could always get it into midfield a little bit easier. I'm wondering if him just tucking in like that has helped in terms of just having an extra body near midfield to be able to make triangles and make the passes that we needed to make. Because in the second half, it was like they couldn't touch us. So that to me indicates that something at halftime changed. And I think it was only a little tweak like that, a little dynamic change. But I think that must have made a really big difference with just allowing an extra man in most situations to be in the right areas. But as well, like Bertrand said, I think the players did step up as well, because Caicedo had a really, really poor first half and came back in the second half. Enzo's second half was better than his first, although he wasn't bad in the first. Almost everyone had a better second half than they did first half. So I think it's a mix of both. I think maybe Maresca gave him a bit of a hairdryer treatment and then said, no, idiot, you go here, and it'll be all right. And maybe it worked.
100%. I mean, I hope that is the case. I was just sorry if you were like, why is he looking at his phone the whole time? I was trying to get our average positions up. Let me just get them up on the screen, because that might be quite interesting to look at. Well, first I need to delete some silly pictures that Lewis has added here of Havertz looking like a donkey. Because that's normal. But let me get this up. So this was the average positions. Well, no, that's not the ones I meant, because I need the ones that don't have the subs on it. Why is it giving me two separate ones? There we go. Load. There you go. So that was the average position. So kind of a 3-3-4, I guess, with Gusto kind of pushing into midfield. Maybe you want to call it a 2-4-4. Like, I don't know. Like I think
it's a 1-5-4.
Yeah, 1-5-4 if you want to call it that as well. With obviously Fofana being more aggressive than Levi Colwill was. But yeah, it was interesting because in preseason, in all the build-up that we've done, like looking at everything Maresca did at Leicester, and everybody was so adamant that he always inverts the midfield, the fullbacks, and he did that to some extent, in particular with Malo Gusto, right? But it's not. And I'm very, very happy to see that. It's not as clear, and I always need to do this, and this is the only way I'm going to do it.
He seems much more willing to change it up than people have led us to believe, I think. There was the idea that he was this really, really rigid coach. And he's just not that. Like, he knows how to tweak and tinker with it, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I am a fan of that. I mean, Bertram, when you look at these, obviously average position isn't always the full shape, because average position is created by a mix of on the ball and off the ball. So you can't just say this was a formation, because we just sit in a different shape when we don't have the ball compared to when we do have the ball. But I mean, you maybe touch on that as well, because obviously you like, I haven't spoken to you much throughout like the build up with Maresca and preseason and stuff. Are you also a fan to see? Because on the one hand, I like a manager that is very much sticking to his principles, like a Maurizio Sarri did all those years ago. But I also like a manager that, has principles, but is willing and happy to like make slight but still important small adaptations to it.
Yeah, I think in terms of what you just said about the manager, I think just overall, if you have some core principles, I think you'll be fine. I think there's definitely room for you to switch up and play differently according to the game you're in. Regarding to the average positions, I think a couple of things for this first half I kind of had questions about. Maybe one of you can help me, but I think, at the end of last season when we saw Cucurella invert instead, I thought we were much better, and I can't believe we're inverting Gusto instead, because I just checked the lineup we played against Brighton. It was pretty much the same thing, with Gusto and Cucurella playing. I don't think we get the best out of Gusto playing centrally, but, I'm not at Cobham every day, so maybe I don't know it. I think if you look at the graphic as well, you can see how close average position-wise Fofana and Gusto are to each other, which really isn't helpful. I think Enzo being pushed, pretty far out left didn't really help us as well. I don't think we get the best out of him. I think Palmer, the first half was also very far out right, where we didn't get the best of him, but he stepped up in the second half in a big way. But I think I'd be interested to see the one with the subs as well, because you should see Mudryk's quite central here. Maybe Neto was further out, and maybe that helped us in build-up. But I think if you look, just generally on this, I don't understand why it is. Yeah, you can see Neto
was a bit further out wide. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't understand why we aren't inverting Cucurella, because I think he's much better at it, and we get the best.
Can I just my input on it is, I don't think we have another defender in our team capable of defending the left wide area. And I think it's more of a necessity that he's the only one that is actually capable of that. So if you invert him, then either Colwell or Badiashile needs to do it, and they just cannot. And therefore, it's like Cucurella is the only one that can, and therefore that's kind of what you have to do.
Colwell can do it. It's just a waste.
Yeah, but he's proven that he can't for me. Or at least he's not shown me that he can. Like, maybe he did at Brighton, but at Chelsea he hasn't defended wide area well.
But in a way, I think by sacrificing Colwell a little bit, by moving him a bit further left, you get the best out of Cucurella and Gusto. But I think Colwell played quite well today.
I mean,
so
at the moment, Gusto, obviously, we're only 2 games into the season, right? Two Premier League games. But in these 2 games, Gusto looks like he's never crossed the ball before. So maybe at the moment, we're actually better to not have him in the final third, trying to cross the ball too much or whatever. I do get your point, though. I'm not by any means trying to say you're wrong. I just think it's, going with what we have. I also think Gusto just has more pace and is more willing to take a player on, because what you got to think, the players that we have in midfield. I mean, Caicedo can do it, but in Enzo, but also a bit in Caicedo, we have more
better technically with the ball than Cucurella is. So I think it's more secure to have him in midfield.
Yeah. I think in passing, Cucurella is better technically, but I think in terms of a bit like what Kovacic was in the old team, where you had that player that would get the ball under pressure and not necessarily always pass it, but just beat a man. And that in our system, Gusto is that now. And Cucurella won't do that. Cucurella will also pass like Enzo will, like Caicedo will, and Gusto will be the guy that will beat a man and with that create space. I think that's probably also something that Maresca wants to see in midfield, but obviously you need to ask him to get a conclusive answer, I suppose. Let me get the lineup sheet up on screen. Obviously, we discussed the lineup already, so we gave our thoughts on that. So let's get into these player ratings. Obviously, this was kind of the base shape, I suppose. I mean, we looked at it now. I guess it was a bit of one of these ones, and then you had, I don't know,
I don't know, man.
3, 4. I think that's closest to it for me.
I think it might have been. I think it might have been more of a 3-3-3-1 with Jackson as the striker and Palmer just sitting behind.
Yeah,
but,
if you want, but Palmer was certain. I mean, there was certainly parts of the game where
it might have been a 3-2-4-1 actually.
Maybe also
maybe even Mudryk further up and Enzo further to the left.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Absolutely. But maybe it was also a bit of a 3-2. Obviously, Cucurella did also push a bit higher. Maybe it was kind of also one of these at times. Absolutely.
The reverse Christmas tree, that one.
Exactly. And I like Christmas, so I'm not complaining. So, I will put it back into kind of the base 4-2-3-1 because obviously we're talking on the ball and off the ball and not just one of the two. So I think it makes it a bit easier, but I hope everybody understands. If obviously you drastically disagree with what I've just dragged around on screen, please tell us. I will take a look at the chat in a second. Because the first rating I would like to have the thoughts on is Robert Sanchez, Bertram. And on that note, I want you to tell me what you thought of Robert Sanchez today. But I also would like for you to touch on what you said in the chat a couple of days ago when you said that you were watching a behind-the-scenes video that Chelsea released of the goalkeepers. Not purely of the goalkeepers, but there was a part in it of the goalkeepers. And that for you, if people don't know, Bertram is a goalkeeper himself. Not quite to a Chelsea level, but still a goalkeeper to a decent level.
Not far off these days.
And from your perspective, technically, and when you say technically, you mean technically as a goalkeeper, not necessarily with the ball, looked way worse than the other two. So what made you think that? And then obviously go into Sanchez's performance today.
I just think he's very when he plays, he looks very erratic. And there are a couple of goalkeepers. I think Onana has the same gene. There are just some goalkeepers in professional football that technically sometimes they make fine saves, but they just look too erratic, and that in turn worries the defense. But if we're going back to the video, I think we have three very good goalkeepers when you look at Jorgensen, when you look at even Petrovic, and when you look at Sanchez. When I was watching it, I thought technically just from goalkeeping technique, I am not a Chelsea level goalkeeper, but I still kind of know the techniques. And just he didn't look up to par with the other ones. I think we've all seen the Cole Palmer chip doing the rounds where he just kind of doesn't even go for it. I think he's not set properly. I think the way he catches the ball sometimes doesn't really impress me when I'm watching it compared to the two other goalkeepers. I even think when I watched him play in training, Philip Jorgensen with his feet, in my opinion, looks better. But there is definitely a disparity between what you perform with in training and what you perform with in games. But I think there is consistency with what you see from Sanchez in training. This very erratic goalkeeper who sometimes, plays the ball very fast. He sometimes he kind of, before he makes the save, he's moved on to the next action, which in turn means that he doesn't complete the action, in full. And I think that worries the defense in a way, because I think you can see with, last season as well, some of the games where we had Sanchez, defensively, we just didn't look as assured as when we got Petrovic in, who's just, a solid goalkeeper. So I think there won't be too many games where he is our number one goalkeeper. The thing is, he doesn't really make, glaring mistakes, but I think even with, the first goal today, I think he's pretty much at fault because he cheats. He when the shot is taken, he kind of gambles that he's going to shoot low, and it's shot in the middle of the goal. I think if it was, I think Petrovic would definitely have saved it. I haven't seen enough of Jorgensen, but if he doesn't cheat, he probably saves it as well. So I think that's pretty much a mistake from his part. You can't really do much with the second goal, but if we're going to criticize him for the first goal, I think you need to give him his flowers as well. This very erratic thing I was talking about earlier, it paid off because he pretty much made a pre-assist to Jackson when he, took a quick goal kick and kicked it up. So plaudits for that. And I think during the second half, when the game was pretty much dead and buried, he came and collected a couple of crosses, which I thought was one of his strengths last season. So I think if I'm going to give him a rating for this game, probably give him a 5. I think he does cost a goal. And to be honest, I hope to see him displaced soon. But, at least he didn't cost, 2 goals this game. So those are my thoughts on Sanchez, at least for right now.
Yeah, fair dues. And I mean, JP says I've definitely seen him have worse games. No, I agree. I think we could all agree.
But that's the thing, because he cost a goal today, in my opinion, and we've still seen him have worse games.
Yeah. When you say cost a goal, do you think he was the player most at fault for that goal, or just one of the players at fault for the goal?
I think when you look at it, I place a lot of blame on Fofana, pretty much mostly because if Cunha has a better finish, it's pretty much only Fofana's fault. But I still think Sanchez, for a Chelsea level goalkeeper, looking at some of the goalkeepers we've had in the past, should be saving that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It's a tricky one for me because, and I mean, someone mentioned it there in the chat. Let me just see where it was. JP said the long ball to Jackson for the Palmer goal. That was good, and he did have a couple of good moments like that. So that's why I'm debating: do I, because of kind of moments like that, do I give him a 6? There was also that kind of very aggressive save in the first half where he kind of came flying out of his goal to kind of make a block, kind of quite far out into his box. But like you touched on, there was obviously the goal where he could have done better. There was a couple of passes where it wasn't great again, like it does every game. I'm maybe thinking a 5.5. Ollie, coming to you before I make a final decision on that. What did you make of Sanchez? What did you make of Sanchez today? What rating would you give him?
It sort of gets a shrug out of 10 from me. He was all right in some spots, not great in others. But at this point, what do you expect from Sanchez? Do you expect him to be a world beater? Because he's never going to be one. Do you expect him to not make a mistake every game? Because he's going to make one. So I guess it's hard because for his kind of standard and for the game overall, I thought he was all right. I'll probably give him a 6. Didn't really have that much to do though, especially in the second half.
Yeah, that is true. Giving him a 6, fair enough. I think if I was kind of thinking a 5.5 anyway, that is kind of the middle ground between you two. So I think that is about right. Yeah, it's a frustrating situation, like especially when we play like this, and then you see the way we attack and the way we score goals. And sure, the first half defensively was a bit all over the place, but it's still it's so baffling to me. Okay, we Lavia injured and we had a couple of issues in midfield still, but we have great players in midfield. We have great players in attack. but the defense and the goalkeeper is just not on the same level, it feels like. So that is a little bit worrying. And like, even if Jurgensen is maybe a bit better, I don't really, I mean, sure, there's a lot of time for me to be proven wrong on that, but I also don't really feel like Jurgensen is going to be like, okay, the next Courtois, is he? So even if Jurgensen is a bit better than Sanchez, it's not going to like make the most drastic of changes, or they have the most drastic of impacts in improving us, even if we did play the other one of those two. Moving up the pitch to the centre backs, and we start off with Levi Colwill. What did you make of him? I'll start with you again, Ollie. Or I say again, I'll start with you this time, Ollie. What do you reckon? 93% passing accuracy, 6 out of 8 long balls, 2 out of 2 ground duels, but only 1 out of 4 aerial duels. Tackles 1 out of 1, I guess. What did you make of him?
Yeah, the stats kind of reflect how I felt about him. I thought he had a good game. Especially his passing game, actually, I thought was particularly good. There was a lot of quite risky sort of fizzing balls he did to break the lines, and a couple of the longer ones as well, which clearly paid off too. I thought maybe there was some moments where he could have done a little bit better defensively. But overall, I think he contributed more good to the game than bad, especially with his passing today. So I think I'd give him a 7.
Fair dues. Yeah, I don't mind a 7. Bertram, would you go along with the 7? Was the first half defensively overall too bad to give any of our defenders a 7? What do you think?
Well, watching some of the highlights back now, I think he was pretty much the glue holding us together, and I think a 7 is more than fair. I think he definitely had one very, very important block where it hit the bar. I thought he was very good. I think he wasn't really at fault for the goals. Of course, him being the central center back, he has some blame in him for organizing, but he can't really be at fault. You can't really discredit him for some of the other mistakes. So I think, as Ollie touched upon, he had some very, very good passes, which we know he's good at. But I thought defensively he was a wall today, and I thought he was very, very good. So I think 7 is a fair shout.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I don't disagree with it much either. I'll probably go along with it. Maybe I was thinking like a 6.5, purely for an overall defensive perspective. But I do understand your point that he was kind of the glue. Move on to Wesley Fofana. You touched on it there about him, that he was kind of to blame for certainly one of the goals. He wasn't bad. There was a few times in the first half when he received the ball, and there was a few poor touches, losing the ball way too easily on the byline. We're starting with Gusto inverting and Fofana pushing out wide. Had only 1 out of 5 successful long balls, only 2 out of 6 ground duels. I was particularly happy. Now, I'm glad to see that he looks quick and sharp again. Maybe not quite as quick and sharp as before his injuries, but still quite good. But he's still not quite there. And I still think Trevor Chalobah would be our best right-sided centre-back in the club. But hey, I don't know what will I give him. I'm thinking 5.5, 6-ish. I'll say 6 for now. I'll see. Maybe I'll slightly adapt my rating. Bertram, I'll go with you first on this one. Is 6 okay for you? Would you go lower than that? What do you reckon?
I would go a bit lower. I think I agree with Okari in the chat. I'd pretty much go for a 4. I know that is quite low, but in my defense, I think he pretty much is at fault for both goals. I think definitely he's at fault for the first goal, not really, spotting Cunha, I think it was, or at least not clearing it with Gusto, because then Gusto maybe should have covered him. And I think also for the second goal, for a defender of his caliber, he probably should not be floundering around as much as he does. So I think he, in my opinion at least, I think he cost 2 goals, and that's why I give him the low rating. Other than that, I didn't really pay that much attention to him. That may be my fault, but that's just the way I saw the game. So I'd give him a low rating because I think he was at fault for the 2 goals, which, in some ways I think you would expect, him being out that long, him learning a new system as well. I think being outside center back in this Maresca team would be quite difficult, but I agree that I think Chalobah, at least maybe until Fofana was up to speed, probably would have been a good solution, but here we are. So I'd give him a 4.
Fair dues. Ollie, what about your perspective? Is a 4 too harsh? Do you think that's fair? Where would you go for Wesley Fofana today, man?
I'd put him about 5, maybe 5.5. I thought he was maybe better than some of the other people in the chat thought he was, but I still thought that there were a lot of moments, especially in his defending, where he was just a bit too erratic. It was just a little bit. it was a little bit too much like he was always chasing the ball. Like he didn't look very calm. There were a few times where he used that to his advantage. Second half, I think he made a really good run into the opposition half before he drew a foul. But I don't know. Like I think overall, he defensively he offered about the same as Colwill, I thought, and offensively he offered less. So yeah, I'd probably go with a 5.5. I'd say.
But wouldn't you argue that Colwill maybe had some more, contributions in a way, or at least was more decisive in a positive way rather than a negative way with his blocks?
I think he was a lot calmer on the ball, and I think he was a lot calmer in defence as well. But that might just be up to the kind of player he is versus the kind of player Fofana is.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think probably a 5 is all right. I probably went a bit high with saying an initial 6, 5.5 even, if I said that. But yeah, I think a 4.5 is maybe a tad harsh. So overall, I think a 5 is okay. If we mix all of our 3 ratings together, it was more about, do I adjust mine to go put it lower than a 5 or not? I think overall, it's probably all right. I guess because Gustav was the more offensive of the 2 fullbacks. Let's go with Marc Cucurella first. I just love him. The way he was fighting, the way when Cucurella got obviously tackled in the second half, and he was like starting to like beat everyone at the same time, asking for red cards and everything. Yeah, I thought he had a good game. He had the 93% pass completion. He had 4 out of 6 long balls. He had 3 out of 5 ground duels. He had 1 out of 1 tackles, 3 clearances, 2 interceptions, 6 recoveries. It's a good game. He's just a good player, and he's a very, very important player to make us work, in my opinion. I think obviously maybe part of what you said about Fofana can also sometimes apply to Cucurella, but I think they're being too erratic. But I think Cucurella, especially in the 2 years that he's been at Chelsea now, what he's improved most at, in my opinion, is controlling and channeling that aggression and that erraticness, if that makes sense. And yeah, I thought it was very good. But I think it was better than Colwill. I'd probably say the same. I think if Colwill gets a 7, I think Cucurella gets a 7. It's my perspective, but obviously you guys can have a different opinion on that. I'll go with you first, Ollie. Do you have a different opinion on that, or would you go along with that?
I'll go a little lower than that. I thought Cuckoo did have a good game today, but I don't think he contributed quite as much as Colwill did. Yeah, I think he didn't really get too much let too much go past him today. I think one of the big issue I think for the whole back 4 is we didn't see a lot of them today in terms of, especially in the second half, because we were attacking so much and because we were on the front foot quite a lot of the time. We were winning the ball back a lot in midfield and up the pitch. So we didn't, especially in the second half, we didn't really see them a lot. And in the first half, when we did see them, it wasn't fantastic. But yeah, thought Cuckoo was all right today. Give him a 6.5.
Yeah, all right. 6.5 is not too far off, is it? Bertram, 6.5, 7, maybe even lower than that. What would you give him?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I think 6.5, 7, an average performance seems fair. I didn't really notice him that much, other than when he came into fights, which I thought was very impressive. I just think
that is the thing I remember the most about his game. So he can't have been that good.
Exactly. So I think just very impressive the fact that he's been able to have this comeback and be an integral player for us. I thought he had one very good through ball in the first half to Jackson when we were 1-0 up, where he kind of got out muscled. I thought that was very, very well. In a way, I think it might be positive when you don't really recognize or you don't really remember Cucurella that much, because he kind of just gets on with his job. I think out of the 2 fullbacks, he was definitely one that was best. But for, let's just call it a solid performance, I think a 7 or 6.5, anywho would be fair.
There you go. On that note, if Bertram isn't 100% decided on either direction, why don't we, guys, if I just end this on the poll that we've had going for a while, give you guys the option. Cucurella rating out of 10. And you guys can decide between a 6.5 and a 7 for Marc Cucurella. Please place your vote in the poll in the chat. And we will come back to it later when we have a conclusion from you guys, like I say, in the chat. We move on to the other side, and Malagusto. Yeah, now, people know I love Malagusto, and he was one of the most impressive players that we had in preseason for me, because of how impressive I found it that he so seamlessly was able to start at left back, invert into midfield, and not have a problem with it at all, considering he's a right back. Now, against City today as well, I don't think it was amazing. I think it was, for example, he got booked. I think that was a very harsh yellow card. I don't think, to be honest, I don't even think it was a foul. It was most certainly not a yellow card for me. But when I look at his stats, they're good. 5 out of 7 ground duels, 3 out of 4 tackles, 2 out of 2 long balls, 87% passing accuracy. Okay, not over 90, but still pretty decent. There was just a couple of moments where he could have certainly played a better cross. There was one quite late on in the game where we had another similar counter-attack to what Joao Felix scored from, but unlike Neto's ball, Gusto's ball was good, and obviously they killed the attack. He didn't have the most tackles in the game, so I guess there is something. I'd probably say, I'm thinking like 5.5, 6. I'll say 6 for now. I'll go with you first, Ollie. What do you reckon? What would you give for Malo Gusto, man?
I think 6 is a little high. I thought he had a worse game than Fofana today. But also,
okay.
Well, I think certainly in the first half, I thought he really struggled actually in midfield. Him and Caicedo in midfield, especially when we were being hit on the counter, they were just being run through like they weren't even there. So, and Caicedo came back and had a much better performance in the second half, and Gusto didn't as much. But in my opinion, Gusto's performance in the first half was close to as bad as Caicedo's was. So, I would say maybe a 4.5 for Gusto. I don't think I think it was one of his worst games for us, I think, on average.
Okay. I mean, like I say, I was watching it one at the same time as well, or maybe I just missed Gusto's really bad moment. Saw a couple for sure. Maybe like the biggest issue I've sometimes felt like, why were you not like there, for example, for one of the goals at the far post? Why was he not there? But I don't necessarily think that's necessarily Gusto having done something so particularly wrong. It's kind of like part of the system that we play, with him inverting into midfield or inverting high up, and then you have and then you leave the rest defense, and then you're aware that okay, the fullback is not going to be there in time. It's not like playing a Aspilicueta there who's going to be at right back all the time. It's like, can I be that critical if you're not back somewhere when you're like, well, you were supposed to be there? And
I guess the thing is because
physics apply, you can't teleport.
No, I get that, but and I wouldn't usually say so in this kind of scenario. But the fact is, especially in the second goal, I think that Wolves scored against us to equalise the game at 2-2. We I thought he was run through in midfield, and then he wasn't even in position for the defending it. So like he would kind of he made every aspect of defending that goal worse, in my view.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm not even trying to change your mind, just trying to get your thoughts across to myself and the people. Batcham, where do you stand? Maybe my 6 is a tad high, like I say, 5.5, 6. I was thinking. Now with Ollie adding a 4.5. Where would you go for Gusto? Did you agree with Ollie that he was poor? Because I think 4.5, considering we won 6-2, I think 4.5 is a very low rating.
I think 4.5 is high considering his first half. I think his first half was near 2. Yeah. No, I think him and Caicedo were both very, very, very bad this first half. And I think he got booked, you could say unfairly, but he was also at the point where if he got, one more foul pretty much, he would have been sent off.
Yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of needless fouls from him today.
Exactly. And I think that was all, this first half. And I was very impressed that he came back out. With all that being said,
actually, according to stats, officially only committed 2 fouls. I'm not sure that's what FotMob says.
I think it was Pice that tweeted it or something, at least someone. But with all that being said, how terrible his first half was, I think coming out and playing a very short second half and where we didn't really notice him that much, I think speaks to his character as well, being a young right back. I think, being able to continue the whole game without, pretty much committing another foul, I think is very impressive. And I think just as bad as his first half was, just as good as second half was, just being very assured, not really costing anything. And, we were talking tactics earlier. I think he was, if you're looking at some of these tactical changes, I think he locked down his right-hand side defensively much more during the second half. I talked about before that it was pretty much, down his side, his right-hand defensive side that we were getting hit on a lot. I wouldn't really give him the fault for the goal. I think it's more Fofana's man, if I'm honest. So I think I'd give him a 6 purely based on the fact that he, without, pretty much had to play a flawless half in terms of, defending, because one more foul he would have been off, and he played very well, stayed on the whole game. So I'd give him a 6. I don't think this is the best version of him, at least yet. You don't know what Maresca is trying to coach him to do. I think he's much better when he's being able to maraud forward. But let's see what Maresca coaches him for. But based on the second half alone, I'd give him an average 6.
Yeah, it's all right. Like I say, for me, it was 6.5. So I feel a bit high. I want to almost like give Ollie what he wants, but I think
listen, if I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted. Like I thought
it's perfect.
I thought it was poorer than you guys.
The edge, right? Because I'm undecided between 5.5, 6. That makes it undecided between a total 5.5 or 5. But I think he's just. I mean, part of it, sure, getting adapted to the system and everything. I just don't think he's had the best 2 games. But he was so impressive last season. Let's not forget the kid is still. I think he might still be 20. Maybe he's turned 21 by now. But even so, he's so young. But obviously we're rating his performance today not based on age. I'm aware, but yeah, I wouldn't call it a cause for concern. I'm just judging because someone in the chat said we need Reece James ASAP. First of all, it's not going to happen because he will be back, play a game, be back injured. So I'd rather Gusto improves than banking on Reece James being back. I'll be honest. But we move on. Get into the midfield, and we move on to Moises Caicedo, who is very, very, very difficult to rate for me today.
Yeah, I really struggled when I was thinking about this earlier because his first half was abysmal, wasn't it? His first half was genuinely abysmal. Bakayoko levels at Watford, abysmal. Like he was really, really poor. He was run through like he wasn't even there time after time after time, leaving these great big spaces, just getting spun constantly. Like, I don't know whether it was partially the tactical setup. I don't know what it was, but it felt like he was like every single time Wolves drove through the midfield, they got the better of him in the first half. And then in the second half, he was loads better. Like he was incisive. He was able to pivot more on the ball. We had more of the ball. He was winning stuff back in midfield like we know he can do. I wonder if he's really struggling with his fitness, having played obviously all the last season, then playing the Copa America, and then coming back and not really having a preseason with us, and now he's being thrown into games again. That's the other worry, obviously, with Lavia having a knock. I imagine if Lavia was fit, he would have played today, and Caicedo would have had a rest, considering he played against Servette in midweek. I don't know. It's a tough one for me because he was a lot better.
He started all 3. Now that you say it, actually.
Exactly. So he's playing a lot of minutes. I think overall, I'd have to give him a 6.5, which I think, considering his first half was like a 2, is probably a fair score.
I think maybe overall, almost even high if you like give it a full 50-50 percentage of like value, kind of. But
do you know what? Let's give him a 6.
Like you said, because it's so impressive that to get himself out of the bad first half, that makes. Even if the second half, say, maybe was an 8 from him, right? Let's say it's a random number, and maybe that overall doesn't give a 6.5. But because it's so difficult to go from playing really bad to playing well, that makes it more impressive. So I think a 6.5 is about right, if I'm honest. But you were trying to adapt it.
Chat does not agree with me. Fair enough.
But you and Diego Bob say, I wish I was. But what do people think? Do you just think, okay, he was bad in the first half, so therefore he was bad in the whole game, even though it was great second half? I don't understand what people are saying. But Ollie, you were trying to still adapt it. Were you trying to say maybe 6 is more fair?
Yeah, I think maybe a 6, because his first half was really poor, and we can't ignore that because we won the game. I think.
Yeah, maybe a 6 overall is a bit fairer, but I do still think it's important to mention how difficult it is to go from playing. Like, how often do you see players be really bad in the first half and be very good in the second half? That doesn't happen that often.
Never happens.
Why? Because it's very difficult to because players know when they're playing badly. They are aware when they're having a bad game. It's not difficult to get yourself out of that. I think people sometimes don't give enough credit for that. But Ollie has adapted to 6. I probably agree with it. What would you give Caicedo? You touched on it even in our chat and earlier already that was the most impressive part about it for you. What would you give him?
I'd give him a 6.5. I think Ollie was onto something there, even though the chat might disagree with us. Bakayoko levels is pretty much exactly how I describe his first half. I think it was really, really catastrophic. Pretty much everything he did was wrong. Got out-muscled, terrible passing. I thought he was one of the reasons, one of the architects of our downfall, because we rely so much of our play on him. And he wasn't able to deliver, which, really cost us. But I think as bad as that first half was, I think he was one of the reasons that our second half was that much better, because he was able to come out with confidence. He was able to come out muscle his opponent when that was needed. I think his passing was much more sure. He was one of the reasons we were able to play out of their press and get a lot of those situations. And where Cole Palmer actually was able to play Madueke because he'd taken out 2 or 3 men in the press. I think he's pretty much. I would give him a lot. He'd almost have the assist for me for the second goal, for the second Madueke goal, where he up in the duel, I think it's against Lamina, who is, quite tall. Heads it away from him, gives Palmer the time to pass it to Madueke. I think a 6.5 is granted because his first half was really bad. And chat, I understand that he was very, very bad, but I think it's both impressive to come out after that game or after that. I don't know what he's been told, but to come out with, play with that much confidence, be that assured, and give us some goals as well. So I think a 6.5, definitely from my point of view, is fair.
Fair dues. And you know what? Ollie was kind of thinking it, even if he kind of slightly backtracked. I think we just blame Puzzle Live TV for, trying to influence Ollie's mind. Don't influence Ollie's mind. But yeah, interesting when your head wobbles for being picky. That's an interesting symptom. I recommend seeing a doctor. But I wish, Ollie, you replied to it in the chat. I wish we were just paid by Chelsea. If anyone has a contact, please, DM me.
Sounds like the easiest money ever. We defend these guys every week for no money. You you do understand this. Like, if somebody was offering for us to pay, we would probably
if you want to pay us to be critical, we're purchasable. But yeah, give him that 6.5 and we move on. We move on to Enzo Fernandez, who a little bit similarly to Caicedo, not to the same extent, but a little bit similarly, didn't have a good first half. But I thought had a very good second half. I thought in particular, now there was this one moment in the build-up to one of the goals. I can't remember which, I think the first one, I'm pretty sure, where he did kind of try to tackle and try to stop with the guy and then kind of done. But I'm like, I think the guy just did it well. I can't remember which of their players it was. I don't even think it was necessarily that bad from Enzo, but they were, especially high up, I thought there was quite a fair few good tackles from him, which isn't necessarily the most common for Enzo Fernandez, so I'll take it. Now, 77% pass completion could be a tad better. Now, obviously, when you see the formation like this, that is worse. But when you're considering potentially kind of playing up in a 4 behind the striker, then the 70% pass completion is not as bad anymore. But still, 1 out of 2 dribbles, okay, 0 out of 3 crosses, but he's not the guy I want crossing all the time anyway. Still 2 out of 4 long balls, although that is worse statistically than somebody else. Caicedo, for example, at 2 out of 2. But still, 3 out of 4 tackles, 6 out of 11 ground duels. So like more than half in ground duel percentage is also pretty good going. Yeah, he wasn't as bad in the second half, and I think he was good he wasn't as bad in the first half, and I think he was good in the second half. So I'll give him a 7, but I think there's also a case to be made to give him a similar 6.5 to what Caicedo got. Even if that's maybe not purely fair, but like I said, just because of how I find it very impressive that Caicedo got himself out of it, maybe they'd end up on the same. But I'll say 7 for now and see if you boys either change my mind or just bring the rating down by yourself like that. Bertram, I'll go with you. What would you give Enzo Fernandez today?
I think I'm between probably a 6 or a 6.5. I think, not to be overly negative on him, I think he's... I don't think we got the best out of him today. I think he was pretty good in the first half, actually. I think he had some very good switches over to Madueke. I think those are the 2 long balls he completed, actually, which, I think one of them maybe even led to the goal with the ball to Madueke, him running in and getting the corner. I think defensively almost today, he was pretty good. I thought he pressed a lot. I think, as you alluded to earlier, he had some good tackles in as well. I would, in a way, hope. I think we saw a couple of times, especially during the first half, when Kobel was pretty much the guy we had furthest behind, and he was the guy on the ball around the center circle when we were up there. And I really, really wish we could just get Enzo in those positions, because I think he was a bit out of position in the first half. I think when he moved a bit more central, not a lot, but a little bit more central during the second half, I thought he got better. But realistically, for a player of his qualities, I thought he was okay. I think 6 is an average performance, and I think he was average today. That doesn't have to be negative. I thought he did what he needed to do. But I think in a way, Caicedo, I would give a higher rating purely because of the fact that he, in a way, created one of the goals. So I think a 6 or a 6.5 would be fair for him.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Ollie, do you agree with that? More like a 6, 6.5 than a 7? Maybe I did go a bit overboard. I will admit that can happen.
I'm close. No, I'm closer to you actually, Lars. I thought Enzo was a 7, much for the similar reasons you said. I thought he wasn't as bad as Caicedo in the first half, although I do think I think a lot of the issues we had in midfield were a collective effort today, not just him. But I think he was less
wouldn't
bad.
you argue that because of how we play on the ball, that when the midfield is a collective issue, it's not necessarily an Enzo thing?
Yeah, but everyone's got a job to do, haven't they? Like,
no,
like
of course.
You know,
yeah.
But anyway, I thought because of that, but I thought generally speaking, he was better in the second half. And I think he probably averaged out as having a better game overall than Caicedo. So I would go with the 7.
Yeah. Fair dues. I guess overall the leagues are at a 6.5, giving them both the same, which I don't think is fully unfair, even though I think it's players Caicedo out a little bit out of his bad first half. I can't lie.
It says a little bit about their games, I think. It's like Caicedo, how he grew back into the game, having such a bad game, and Enzo being, having a slightly better than average performance.
Yeah. I am tempted to lower my rating for Caicedo a little bit to even it out, but that would be, falsifying. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
That would be listening to chat, which is a bad idea.
More listening to you, really.
Well, that's always a good idea.
maybe it's a fantastic idea. Best for that. Because Palmer and Madueke were obviously the two standouts today, let's go to Mykhailo Mudryk first. What do we think? I will bring up a quote as well, actually, before we continue on this, because it's a quite interesting quote from Enzo Maresca about Mykhailo Mudryk. Maresca on why he subbed Mudryk: because I was not happy. In some moments, we can manage some situations better. He was working hard off the ball, but on the ball, I expect a bit more quality from Misha. He had some good moments today, but the reason why was to change it and give Pedro Neto some minutes. See, I mean, he was probably working hard off the ball, but was it also the first goal? Was it the second goal? There was one goal where I felt if Mudryk tracked back a bit better there, considering Cucurella came quite far inside, if Mudryk just tracked back better, I don't think the goal happens. I'm a little bit surprised, if anything, that Maresca picked out the off-the-ball work as, something to praise, when I thought, well, he let the guy go and let him cross, and that's we conceded from it. So I don't know. Yeah. So what did you make of Mudryk? Ollie, I'll go with you first. And also, what did you make of the comments from Maresca on Mudryk?
I think the comments from Maresca are fair. I thought Mudryk had a very Mudryk first half. He did a few things that were all right, and then whenever it came time for the consequential part of that to come right, it fell apart. It's same old from Mudryk, getting himself into good positions, not capitalizing on it, not making the best decisions, not knowing where necessarily to be positioning wise. I'm more interested than these comments specifically. I'm more actually interested in the comments Maresca made about Mudryk the other day, saying that he knows what the problem is with him effectively. Like he's saying he talked about how his main issue is his game IQ and his decision making and stuff like that. So for me, it's quite nice to know that he actually does know what's wrong with Mudryk and that he can fix him, hopefully. Because I thought, especially in compared to the way everyone else impacted the game today, I thought he really didn't. He was probably the least impactful player on the pitch for me. So for that, I think I've got to give him a 4. I think he was quite poor.
Fair dues. I will bring the rating screen up on screen in a minute. I would, if I'm already kind of showing, kind of things on Twitter, I do quickly want to get to something that I tweeted early this morning. Where was it? And there's this clip, and obviously Dre tweeting, I always find it frustrating when Mudryk can hit the ball so clean like this in training, but somehow fluffs it every time during game. And I said, literally, every clip we've ever seen from Mudryk in training, like, he hits the ball like he's prime Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but when he shoots in a game, it's more likely to hit the corner flag than to score. And that's kind of it. Like you touched on, Ollie, in terms of what Maresca said, it's all mentally for him, and I don't really know why. He said some interesting things a few weeks ago in like a Chelsea TV interview where it was like, kind of what he seems to struggle with is finding the right mix of trying too hard, but then because you're trying too hard, then trying not to try as hard, and then not trying hard enough, and getting that balance right.
He's in his head, basically.
Yeah, it's all in his head. Like
Yeah.
he can, like, technically, I think he's seriously up there as one of the best players we have in the squad. Like when he's normal, like when he's not stressed by whatever, his touch is great, his dribbling is great. He can shoot probably better than anyone in the squad, really, both feet. Again, I'm purely going off training. I'm not saying he's shown that in games. And yeah, you can say someone replied to this tweet saying, isn't that the difference between pro and amateur footballers? I would disagree, if I'm being honest. You can be super talented and struggle to put it onto the pitch. That's why there's sometimes super talents when they're 17, 18 that don't make it to be bloody Messi. And then some guys like Haaland and Mbappe who seem like they don't even know what worrying about things is, and they are just perfect from the day they turned 17 or whatever.
I think he just, I don't know. I think he gets put in pressure situations, and mentally he just really doesn't seem to know how to handle it. And I wonder if he just retreats into himself. And we were talking before a little bit about when he doesn't always get the ball. And I think it's half because sometimes the players don't believe in him, and half time it's because he doesn't believe in himself, so he's not getting into positions to receive it. So I think a confident Mudryk is a different player.
100%.
I think that's clear.
We just haven't quite seen it. I still stand by.
Just haven't seen it.
Yeah, exactly. I still stand by the fact that arguably his best game for the club was his first game when he came on against Liverpool. I still don't think he's looked as good in any game since. Like, obviously that was only part of a game, but even still, yeah. Bertram, I'll come to you. Give me your thoughts on Mudryk. Obviously, if you want to, also what Anza Maresca touched on, I'm sure you remember, and maybe also like how he's able to look at least so good in training, and obviously Chelsea select what clips of training they show us. Maybe there's also bad clips from training that we just don't get to see. But from what we do see, he looks like an absolute well-beaten training, and then on the pitch, very rarely does. So on today, and then maybe also what would you make of that training and game difference?
No, I think training is one thing. It's not only the clips you see. I think a lot of the interviews, whenever some of the players are asked who shoots the hardest, who shoots the best, who's the fastest, I think Mudryk is one of the names who's quite frequently heard. I think it's quite frustrating because I think we all know that there is a player there. He has these moments of quality. I think we all remember the debut at Anfield, the goal against Newcastle as well last season. I don't really know. He's kind of an enigma because I think even though today I thought he was very, very poor, I thought he had very few moments of quality, both on and off the ball. But he still managed to, have that dribble where, it took a very, very good tackle to stop him. I don't know if, it's a loan that's needed, or maybe just working with, Maresca, an actual tactical manager for a season or two, or to get the best out of him. But I think he is probably the person in the squad who has the lowest, bottom ceiling. When he's bad, he's really, really bad. But we all know that the quality is there. I think even last season, I would be excited to see what he's able to do if we give him, the thing is, the things we're saying now, about giving him a run of games, even playing him against better opposition where he has more space, we've already seen this. I think he was poor today. I think it was fair enough that he got subbed out, but I think there is obvious quality there, and I've really struggled to find out what it is. I think he's an interesting character when you follow him on Instagram as well. I think maybe you are right. He's in his head too much. But I kind of struggle to find out what it is. But I think obviously there's a player today, or there's a player, just not when we saw today. And if I were to give him a rating for the game today, I think a 4 is pretty much fair, below average.
Yeah, honestly, guys, I'd even go lower. Like maybe when I read out some stats to you, maybe you will also think maybe you've gone even too high, as crazy as that sounds for a 4, because you played 45 minutes. He only touched the ball 13 times. In those 13 times, he had 8 passes. He completed 5 of those 8 passes. He attempted 2 dribbles, succeeded with one of them. Attempted 1 cross, didn't succeed with that one. I'm not going to be too harsh on that. Duels, he had 5 in total, 4 on the ground, won 1 of them, so 25%. one in the air, lost that one. Didn't concede,
It's not good enough, is it?
Didn't win a foul, committed one. Like,
just wasn't a very
I
consequential
like
game for
nice
him, was it?
Ludwig, right? Like, I like the guy. But today, when you see what Madueke did on the other side, man, I would have said 2. I'll be honest, guys. Like, it's like how 13 touches in a game like this, when we're like, I know it was crazy end to end, but an end to end game should be exactly the game that Mykhailo Mudryk thrives in. Like, you see the game being end to end. Surely all you need to do is wait for us to win the ball and then use the fact
run as
that you're the
fast
fastest
as you
player
can
league
in the other
run.
direction. Yeah,
exactly. Like, you're playing next to Enzo Fernandez, one of the best long passes potentially in football. And I've never seen Mudryk make a proper run in behind. Like, I just don't understand why this doesn't happen. And this is why I'm glad about Maresca, and why it also makes so much sense how he's using him. At the moment, it feels like Maresca is using Mudryk when the left winger plays on Maresca's side of the pitch. So he can literally coach him during the game. Because when he's on the opposite side, he can't tell him anything. So then it's pointless. And you could argue it didn't particularly help, considering I said 2.
But think about how bad it could have been.
No, I guess, yeah, no, exactly. And maybe that's also not helping. Maybe that extra information is making it more difficult for Mudryk to I don't know what to do and know when to do and not overthink what he should be doing in each moment. Maybe that's also part of the issue. But when you have such
you've got to do with Mudryk
attributes, let me just finish this point, and then you can say what you want to say early. Like I say, if you're that quick, but you never run in behind, what is the point?
Then you're not that quick. Yeah,
it's like Usain Bolt deciding, no, I'm actually not gonna be a sprinter. I'm instead gonna do bloody javelin throwing or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're that quick running behind, why not? Like, and again, if we are playing a heavy possession game against teams that sit back, then you can't always run in behind. Fair. But today, in the first half in particular, he could have, but doesn't. And I just don't really get it. Ollie, what were you trying to say? Go on.
Yeah, just if I was Maresca, I would be spending I would be locking Mudryk out of the gym and instead sticking him in a dark room with just compilations of Gareth Bale, probably for Spurs, but also for Southampton and a few other players. I know he kind of played as a left back for Southampton, but a player with that kind of speed needs to know how to use it, and Bale really did. And there haven't been many players who've come across that give you such kind of like raw Gareth Bale kind of energy like Mudryk does. And so
True.
I would just be saying he just needs to be watching tape 24/7 to learn what he needs to do, where he needs to go, because he's been here for a couple of years now. Like, like he's as settled as he's going to be.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was signed in January 2023. Sure, in the beginning it was early and everything else. The thing is also, he's not that young. Like, he's 23. A lot of people always talk about loans, and with the structure that we have at Chelsea, with the kind of players that we sign, if you're 23, you're way past the age of loaning. Like, you're not getting a loan from Chelsea anymore by 23. By 23, you're either gonna make it or you're not. And I think if this season he doesn't kick on, I think he might be sold next summer. Now, we will make quite a hefty loss on him if we do that. So maybe that will keep us from selling him for a bit more, a bit longer. But that's just the problem. And it's just like, he needs to fix it. He needs to try and fix it somehow. And I'm rooting for him to do so.
But Maresca does know that. He knows the problem.
Yeah, of course he knows. And that's why I feel bad for him in a way, because he, like I said earlier for Caicedo, these players know even more than we do that they're not having good games. And Mudryk is sat there, why on earth have I not got the ball or touched the ball more than 13 times in this half? He will think about those things as well. And he will probably sit in bed a bit miserable tonight, because he's like, well, I started, Madueke started, I did fuck all, got hooked at halftime, and the other guy scored a hat-trick. And the other attackers, well, Palmer got 3 assists in the goal, and Jackson got an assist and a goal. And Mudryk just did nothing.
Even Felix scored.
Exactly. Even Felix scored. So yeah, I mean, did the stats maybe make you think about potentially lowering it as well, or are you gonna both stick to your 4?
I'll stick to a 4. I think he was comfortably the worst player today, though.
I stick to a 4 as well.
Fair dues. That overall gives us a 3.3 then. So I guess that pushes it up to a 3.5 if I say 2 and you boys say 4. And we move on. I guess let's do it in that order. Might as well stick to the wingers. Noni Madueke. I think this one is quite simple. We give him a
Easy.
10. But
across the
boy,
board.
was he good. Boy, was he good. And I want to bring that up as well, because I still cannot believe quite how funny it was. Hold up. Where is it? There it is.
At the end of the game,
story.
at the end of the game, the fans were singing, Noni's right, your town is shite, Noni's right. Yeah, it's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. So I'm sure almost all of you will have clocked that this was happening. So yesterday, Noni Madueke late at night, or in the evening, shall we say, put on his Instagram story, everything about this place is shit, and location put it to Wolverhampton. First, I want to say, thank God he added the location. Because if he didn't add the location, by God, the fans would have lost their minds. He's talking about Chelsea, is this and that. Like, thank God he location tagged Wolverhampton. But then a couple of minutes later, he's like, damn, wrong Instagram account. You lot are too fast. So that is quite funny. I can also bring up another quote from him where he was actually asked and spoke about it. According to Fabrizio, Madueke is set to stay at Chelsea. So that is
interesting.
so
the owners have now seen enough. Yeah. I think in the post game presser, he because of course he was man of the match, so so they were going to interview him after the game. I think he sheepishly had to apologize.
No, exactly. I thought I saw a quote from Madueke that was speaking about that comment, but now
yeah, he said something like, I'm sure Wolverhampton is a nice place. I'm sorry, it's a mistake I made on my part. Basically, that's it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at, but for some reason I thought Pice retweeted it, but now I can't see.
He is right,
so it doesn't matter.
He is right though. Wolverhampton's a horrible place. So
yeah. I mean, I've not been, but it sounds like it. Do you know what I mean? I've got to be honest, but yeah, I mean, fantastic. The goals, they were. I mean, okay, the first one was maybe a tad lucky with the deflection, but the second one was really good. The third one was really good. And I don't know. I mean, he's like Noni Madueke is exactly the type of player that I don't understand why every player isn't like that. And when I say that, I don't mean like being a bit arrogant. I don't mean being a bit of a shithouse off the pitch and stuff like that. I mean, you're a player that maybe, got slightly lucky that we chose him to sign, considering of all the other players we could sign and whatever else. And obviously with other players coming, he's a bit unlucky with Esteval, Kendry Payers and stuff. But Noni Madueke, when he gets a chance, I've not seen Madueke have a bad game very often. Like, Madueke either doesn't play or plays decent.
He's not had a bad game under Maresca, has he?
No, under Maresca, most certainly not. But even last season, he either didn't play or he played pretty well, like, for the most part. Like, he gets himself involved, he tries, usually gets a goal or an assist, really. And
Noni has the opposite problem to Mudryk.
From good crosses.
Noni has the total opposite problem to Mudryk.
Exactly that. And by total opposite, I don't mean that he's completely untalented.
No,
but
he's just in the same way that Mudryk overcomplicates things in his head and lets things get to his head. Noni is kind of overconfident with stuff.
Yeah,
and
Noni is
basically why he always try the same thing over and over. And today it was to his credit; he scored 3 goals from it.
Yeah, exactly. And Noni Madueke is one of those people that he's clearly a very, very confident person, a very confident player. And I think that's why he's able to do these things. He just believes in himself. While Mudryk is probably the exact opposite and questions himself and everything he does. Well, Madueke is like, yeah, of course I'm the fucking best, so of course I'm gonna fucking go score now. It's not even a question in his head that he's gonna now go do that. He's more, if anything, when he doesn't score, he's like, how on earth have I not scored? I'm amazing. How has this happened? That's what it feels like. But that's what makes him good, because that confidence, like JP says, he terrorizes fullbacks, and he truly does. Because I feel like if you're the fullback playing against him, it's like you look at him and you see he's not even considering you as someone that could stop him. He's like, I'm going past you and there's nothing you're going to do about it. And that makes it very difficult for a defender to deal with a player when, like, they're so sure that they're going to beat you, and they're quick and they're strong. And I said this many times last season. The most impressive thing for me about Noni is, apart from his shooting technique actually being surprisingly good, very few players are that combination of physically strong and quick. And I mean, Gareth Bale, you mentioned it there from Mudryk, Ollie, and I'm not trying to compare Madueke to Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale is just another one of these players that's like that physical, but a different kind. Like, Madueke just seems to know how to use his body very, very well, physically considering he's also very quick off the mark and over distance. So yeah, I'm just very, very happy and impressed, Bertram. Excuse me. I'm sure you're also very, very happy and impressed. What do you have to say about him today? What do you have to say about him overall? Like I said, about confidence, how much of an opposite is he to Mudryk in that sense?
I think if you give me the opportunity to bet on one of our front four scoring a hat trick this game, I think you probably would have been the one who gave the most odds back. Him scoring a hat trick is very, very unlikely, but I'm very happy he did. I think it's as you touched upon earlier, it's a testament to his character. I think he's one of the players we've seen, really dedicate work in the off season as well. When it's been on, I think it was in Mykonos or wherever he was, where he was working with a personal trainer. And a lot of the goals we saw today are things I know he's been working on. Beating a man, coming out to that angle and having a shot. And I thought he was very good. And even before the 3 goals, he was very impressive. Able to run, past a couple of players, get the corner. I thought he had. Whoever Wolves was it Id Nuri on toast. I thought he was very, very good. And just, he kept asking questions, kept winning on things. And it's also a testament as well, the fact that he'd scored the same goal pretty much 3 times and they weren't able to stop him. And one of you as well touched upon the fact that his shooting with his right foot really looks lethal as well. Very hard finishes, something we saw both against Servette. I remember a goal against Luton as well last season. I think he deserves his plaudits as well. Defensively, Maresca touched upon it after the game that the most impressive thing you saw from him today was a run back in the 90th minute, which was also a testament to his mentality. So I think he's definitely a player that we need to keep our eyes on. Sorry, but I think it's very impressive the way he's worked in, and I think a 10 is more than fair. So very impressed by his performance today.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very, very happy with him today. Also, quickly a shout out to the Chelsea admin, playing on the fact of what Noni posted yesterday, obviously, and saying he's starting to like this place. And I'm sure he does. But yeah, shout out you, Noni Madueke. What performance and what a set of goals. Also, just to mention it, he scored those 3 goals from a combined expected goals of 0.54. And that's not just those 3 goals. That's him in the game. Had an XG of 0.54. Score 3 goals. Now that is impressive. So well done.
He also had a shot the first half as well.
Yeah, no, he did. Absolutely. Cole Palmer then. And I mean, there was a part of me where I was like, no, Cole, don't be doing second season syndrome, please. When he missed that chance early in the game to make it 2-0, and I'm like, how have you ruined that? And wasn't that Madueke setting that one up as well? So Madueke could have had an assist there as well, I think. Or was it Gusto? One of the two. I think it was Noni. But after that, boy, did Cole Palmer turn up. The touches, the flicks, the finish on the chip. I mean, shocking goalkeeping and defending, sure, but still had to score it. And I'll be honest, other than Madueke and Palmer, I don't think anyone would have scored that attempted chip in that moment, if I'm honest. Like, the others probably would have found a way to bottle it. And the assists, just pure class. And also, even the goal that he didn't get an assist for, that Joao Felix goal, his through ball to Pedro Neto was, now the long ball from Sanchez to Jackson was good, and then Jackson's layoff to Palmer was good, but then that Palmer pass to Neto, that is the pass that makes the goal. Because that pass, if that's perfectly weighted, it allowed Pedro Neto to run onto it without much pressure and have the time to pick out where to pass it off to. I'm not saying it's the most difficult pass in the world, and a player as good as Cole Palmer should be able to play that pass, but he just does. And, like I said, I was wondering, please don't fall into second season syndrome. I don't think it was any good against City. Even when he came on against Servette, obviously he came on as a false 9, so it would make not too much of a conclusive judgment from that. But still, he's just so good. I'm also giving him a 10. I say, obviously, really, 3 assists and the goal. What bloody more do you want from players? And I'm not sure, genuinely, guys, if we've ever done a player rating stream on this channel where 2 players got a 10. And maybe it's happened once or twice, but I'm genuinely not sure if that's happened. And I think today this is more than warranted and more than justified. Bertram, would you give Cole Palmer a 10 as well? And also, what can you even say about him? Were you at all worried that Cole could have quite a drastic drop-off compared to last season, whether that was because of system or simply because second season syndrome type thing?
I haven't really thought about it that much. Maybe a bit after the City game because he wasn't that impressive, but how it is against City. I think I haven't really been that worried. You can also see his, both his mentality seems very sound. The way he played, for England during the Euros speaks to his character as well, his quality. I I'd give him, the same amount of points he's given my FPL team, 15 out of 10. I thought he was very impressive. I also completely forgot he scored, like Puzzle did in the chat, or I at least completely forgot he scored. But when you think about the goal, fantastic. And I was even celebrating when he hit it because you're that confident that it'll go in. But just the fact that he's able to come into this game with 4 goals and assists, there were some Arsenal fans tweeting before the game that Saka had more than he did before the game. So, put that to bed, but just very, very impressive. And you could speak to the fact that, maybe some of the assists, weren't, line breaking passes or whatever, but someone still needs to do them. And the fact that he just racks them up is very, very impressive. He also had the flick for, I think it was Gusto in the first half, which almost set up a chance, which is very, very, very good. He maybe, drifted a bit far right out during the first half to be as influential as he was. I didn't think the chance he, quote unquote, missed was that big. I might not have seen it correctly, but I thought it looked, more difficult to score than not. More difficult not to score than to score. But what can you even say for a player who has 4 goals and assists?
Back as well,
but I don't remember it properly. But what can you even say for a player with 4 goals and assists? I thought it was very impressive. And as you touched upon as well, the second assist for the Neto the Neto through ball, fantastic. So I think a 10 is more than warranted for our 10, and I hope to see him again link up more centrally with Noni Madueke with the left winger as well. I thought it was very, very good.
Yeah. And the one last thing I'll say is, considering we gave Mudryk the number 10 after those 6 months, if anything, and how we casually take numbers away from players, to be honest, I'm slightly surprised we haven't given Palmer the 10 this summer, because really, he should have it. But yeah, I mean, we talked about Mudryk being a confidence player. I don't think taking a number away from him would particularly help build his confidence. So, maybe better to...
No, I think that would shatter his world.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So, the only thing you could maybe do is give him the 11, but then you'd have to take that from Madueke. So, it's not really an option, is it? Ollie, speak to me about Cole himself. What player? And like I said, I'm just so glad. Like, obviously, this doesn't mean he's now going to have the same as good a season as last year, but I still think for him, for us as fans, for the club, it's important that he had so soon into the season had such a big standout performance again already. I think that just makes it much easier to just carry it on to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think he had a really, really good game today. I don't think anyone could dispute that. Hat-trick of assists to the same player for the first time. I think it's since Harry Kane did it to Heung-min Son back in 2017, something like that. So, Cole Palmer's out here just doing generational stuff week to week, breaking records, for a player who's still only, what is he, like 22 or so? So he's around that age, isn't he? To still be doing that kind of, to be making these kind of impacts is just ridiculous, man. And to be honest, I wasn't that worried about him, especially after I saw him at the Euros. Nothing can phase this kid. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So, I wasn't really worried about him coming back. I figured this season he would probably have less of an impact, but that only because of how big an impact he had last season. But to be honest, in a way, he's kind of picked up where he left off. He just doesn't seem to be bothered at all by the scenario around him. It doesn't matter where he is, who he's playing, what he's doing. He's out there to play football, and my God, does he do it well. You thought his goal was really nicely taken. Reminded me a little bit of the Everton one from last season, where he lobbed Pickford. And then obviously making all the assists as well. So he's out here just doing crazy stuff, and long may it continue, man, because he's an unbelievable player. I'm going to give him a 9.5. The only reason I'm going to give him a 9.5 is because despite getting a hat-trick of assists and scoring a goal, he did miss that one chance earlier in the game. That is literally the only thing. Because for me, a 10 is a perfect performance. Noni really kind of did have a perfect performance, didn't really put a foot out of place. Palmer put 1 foot out of place, so he gets a 9.5.
Fair dues. A harsh critic, but fair dues. Because the two of us still gave a 10, I don't know. I still think it's probably the first time we had 2 10s on the stream. So, I'll take that. How many more times is that going to happen? Just quickly, even good old Cucurella is now playing along. His tweet post game is, everything about this place was nice today.
I love Cucurella. He so unnecessarily stirs the pot all the time. I love it.
Yeah, like he absolutely loves it. By the way, just quickly, shout out to Haaland and also like Haaland's dad. Like you have obviously Cucurella singing that song about Haaland and Haaland, scoring last week. They could have tried to use this to dunk on him and us way more than they did. Like I saw an interview with Alfie Haaland, like obviously Haaland's dad, and he was just saying, "Yeah, I think Erling pies are quite funny," and thinks Cucurella
It is funny though. That's the thing. It genuinely is funny. Some of those players just kind of have that kind of funny kind of energy about them. And Cucurella is really one of those. Werner was similar. It just everything he did was funny.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like Werner is a good is a good example. I'm not really sure of that many others that I think of that are a bit like that, which makes Cucurella all the more special. I would say. And now we move on. We move on to Nicolas Jackson. Before we speak about Nicolas Jackson, let me quickly bring one thing.
He's just gone up. He's just gone up in my estimations for the game.
Yeah, he absolutely has. So the post by 433 was 98 seconds. That's how long it took Nicolas Jackson to make it 1-0 in the game. And he quoted that post in his Instagram story and said, "At John Obi Mikel, shut your mouth. Don't talk shit. We are killing ourselves for Africa." And I'm like, boy, I love it. Because if John Obi Mikel can talk shit, why shouldn't Nicolas Jackson be allowed to talk shit back? Why shouldn't he? And I absolutely love it. And I also, now I'm not African, but I also understand what he is getting at. Like, Africans have so many struggles in football of getting the respect that they often deserve as nations, as individual players. And usually, more often than not, Africans do stick together because they usually, as a collective, face difficulties, right? But that's what I don't get. I'm like, how you sat there, like, sucking off Osimhen, essentially, like begging everyone to bring Osimhen here. But this other African striker, you're just like slating left, right, and center. Like what do you think is going to come out of that? Especially when he spent the whole summer talking about how he hates players that want to play for like England first, but then they don't make it, and then they choose to play for Nigeria or Ghana or wherever. And I'm like, yeah. So don't shit on those players that chose to play for African countries from the get-go. Like he can still say that he thinks we need Osimhen, but there's still no need to degrade and slate Nicolas Jackson for that. So I absolutely back it. And I think Johnny Mikel, I don't think he will take necessarily much offense to this. Mikel will probably quite rate this as well and probably think Jackson actually got more balls than he thought.
They've kind of gone back and forth a few times, if I remember rightly. If I remember rightly, like Jackson, or there's been comments about each other like before. So
really?
I wonder if there's a bit of a back and forth thing going on. Of course, like Mikel really wants to bring Osimhen to the club. Obviously, that threatens Jackson's starting place, so he's probably not too pleased with that. And then, with a lot of the complaining and stuff that Mikel has been doing lately, I can see why someone like Jackson would clap back at him, and I think he's well within his rights to say so as well.
100%. Moving on back to the kind of the rating screen, and we talk about Nicolas Jackson. Ollie, why don't you go first? You said it kind of put your estimations up. Does that mean in your match ratings today, or just like overall, like in how you?
You know what? I am kind of tempted, but no. The reason I'll give him a slightly higher match rating than I originally was probably thinking of is because that graphic is spot on. 98 seconds it took for us to take the lead. That kind of set the pace of the game as a really quite frenetic one, and it probably played into the reason why the game was so like crazy as it was in the first half. But to put your team up in 98 seconds, like in less than 100 seconds, is the best start possible for a striker. As a striker, if you can put your team 1-0 up within the first 5 minutes of a game, you have done your job that day. Because you've scored a goal, you've done what you're supposed to do. And people talk about Jackson and say, for all the other good things he doesn't score goals. Well, today he scored a goal in less than 100 seconds. He's proven that he can provide for this team. No, sorry. I was just going to say he's really proven that he can provide for this team. So like people will probably just find another reason to have a go at him, I would imagine, because he seems like one of those players that a lot of people like to just have a go at. But I thought he was really good today. Exactly. I would give him an 8.5, I think.
Yeah. 8.5 sounds good to me. I can't lie.
Yeah, header as well, which he never scores.
I literally wanted to say that. And Puzzle Live TV said it here. It was a header. Jackson gets a lot of justified, for the most part, stick that he's not very good in the air and he doesn't score headers and he's poor with his head. Well, today he scored a header. And also what I was going to say is, I mean, both of you, maybe a bit more than me, but still all of us agree we were poor in the first half in the grand scheme of things. Who was the guy that turned up most? Jackson got himself a goal and an assist. You know, he did both of his goal contributions in that poor first half for us. Now, that can also show you that those are the type of vibes of games that Jackson thrives in. The crazier it is, the better Jackson is. But also, the goal came so early, it wasn't crazy yet. And he still got himself this goal. So, yeah, big up. I would probably go along with an 8.5 for Wonders. I thought he was good. I thought he also kept being good in the second half. I thought he made smart runs that allowed space for other players, whether that was Noni or Cole Palmer. I thought he did well in holding the ball up. For the most part, there was a couple of occasions where the ball bounced a little bit too far, but I also felt that on some occasions he was fouled and the ref didn't give fouls when he got barged in the back when trying to control the ball, when he gave it as fouls in the other direction quite often, but on Jackson he very often didn't. And yeah, you know, obviously we touched on the Joao Felix goal. That was a long ball from Sanchez. Jackson held it up, laid it off to Palmer. That builds the attack. So it wasn't just him getting that goal and that assist. He
did a lot of other things today as well in terms of linking the play and like, yeah, like he did a lot of other things today as well. But the important thing was,
and when he does that on top of also getting a goal and an assist, I mean, what more do you want from a striker, man?
Exactly.
Like,
he's done his job
Osimhen
today.
wouldn't have had a better game than Jackson today. Sure, he might have got a goal or two, but he certainly wouldn't have had the same link-up play.
No, I agree with that. I think he had a very good game today, and he deserves his praise for it because, yeah, especially because of a lot of the criticism that he gets tends to be about his goal scoring. So,
100%. But would you go along with an 8.5? And what did you make of Nicolas Jackson today? And also, what do you think of him clapping back at Johnny Miguel?
I definitely think an 8.5 is fair. There's a word in Danish called chaos pilot, which kind of translates to a chaos pilot, which I think fits him perfectly. I think whenever he's involved in a game, kind of in a Darwin Núñez way, he always creates something. I still think he is a handful. There are definitely facets to his game he should improve. I think physically, I would have liked to have seen him outmuscle the Wolves defender to maybe get a one-on-one after he scored from the Kukureya through ball, but. You can't really. We were talking about a very tough first half. He's pretty much the reason that we go into the half level and that we end up winning the game with a very well taken goal. We've seen him miss much easier shots than that last season. And just for him to stand there, casually headed in, go out and celebrate with the fans. You can see how much it means to him. I think is very important. Also for him to get off the mark this season as well. To hopefully get those 14, 15 Premier League goals again was very important. But again, I think you just see there are so many facets to his game. You both touched upon it as well. Osimhen, he might have scored that goal, but link up wise, he's not near. I think the ball for Cole Palmer, in that sense, being able to outmuscle the Wolves player, pass it to Cole Palmer, great pass, and for him to kick it in. And I think as the game progressed, as we move further up the field, you can see his link up play really help a lot and tie a lot of attacks in. So I think it's very impressive. And the fact that we've got Joao Felix now, who I think also will, play a bit as a 9. I think Osimhen, he might improve us, but I think we're onto something very special with Jackson. You can also see how much it means to him. He's also a bit crazy. There's a bit Diego Costa over him. You can see how he almost got into a fight with the whole Wolves team.
We scored 6 goals today, and I think after every single goal, we started to fight the Wolves players.
Exactly.
It was a good time. I was a big fan of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
It kind of brings some of the old Chelsea back. But I think we're onto something special. And I really, really don't want to stunt his development because imagine this guy with 2, 3, even 4 years of development, what he's going to turn into. If we can, add some clinicality to his game, that's not even a word, but add some of that to his game. His build-up plays immaculate. I think very well. So I think 8.5 for his performance, very good. And him going out and clapping against Mikel as well. Sometimes Jonathan Mikel says some good things. Sometimes he says some weird things. Just shows the confidence he has. Maybe it's very quick after the game to go out and do it. But if that's what motivated him, I think fair enough. So an 8.5.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm very, very happy with it. I mean, and just to quickly touch on what you said with Osimhen, the one thing is obviously the way Wolves played today wasn't like that. I do think Osimhen can help us a lot in those games when the opponent hits super deep and we're forced to play cross after cross after cross. Having Osimhen then can be the decisive thing in whether we win those games or don't win those games. And that across the season, because we will play quite a few of those games in the season, can play a big role in whether you come 3rd, 4th, or 6th, 7th, or even in another season or two fight for the title or not. But there's also a case to be made, just get Drogba and just get him to work on heading with Jackson once a week for an entire afternoon. Like, do that, because I think there's also still, like Bertram said, Jackson is 22. Jackson only started to play as a striker in the season before we signed him. Before that, he was a winger. So, of course, the guy didn't spend a lot of time heading the ball before that when he was a winger, right? How often do you see wingers heading the ball much, right? So, like, let these guys develop. Like TJ Drogba, and I know everyone always makes this comparison. And I know football has advanced a little bit and players are ready sooner than they were those 15, 20 years ago, like it was for Drogba. But still, most strikers, if you're not called Erling Haaland or Kylian Mbappe, you're not going to be the best striker that you can be before you hit 26, 27 at the earliest. Before you're 25 or 24, 25, you can't even judge how good a striker is going to be or not going to be, because so much of what a striker is about experience in front of goal, experience about learning that coolness in front of goal. And that's just normal that takes a little bit of time. And that, like, even Hudson-Odoi is another example, not a striker, obviously, but is another one. Look at what he's doing at Forest now. Like, he's better than all of our left wingers that we have in the club. Like, unless you include Pedro Neto as that now. But even then, like, but Hudson-Odoi had as many goal contributions for Forest last season as Pedro Neto has had in the last 3 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, that doesn't necessarily mean he's better, but certainly worth more than the 3 million or 2 million we sold him for. That's all I say. Shout out to Cyril, by the way. Do what he says. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Let's get to the subs. Obviously, we made a halftime substitution of bringing Pedro Neto on for Joao Mudryk. And then the next sub was Joao Felix coming on for Nicolas Jackson after 68 minutes, which obviously worked out pretty well as well. We did today actually use up all 3 subs, so it's also pretty good going, I guess. Vega came on for Cucurella in the 76th minute.
Isn't there 5 in the league? Isn't there 5 subs in the league?
Isn't it?
Oh, you said 3. Oh, did you mean all 3 windows?
Yeah, no, I actually meant to say 5. Sorry if I said 3.
Oh, that's fine.
I meant to say in this game we actually used 5, while in the last couple of games we didn't use all the 5 subs. That's what I tried to say. Sorry. But yeah, and then the last one was Palmer being replaced by Nkunku, which is also crazy. Like, not the best day for good old Nkunku, considering that we scored 6 goals and he wasn't involved. So, yeah, not ideal for him. Shout out Ricky, by the way, super chat. Just seen it now. Maresca ball better than Poch ball, and we're just getting started. Well, not surprised in that, but I love it. So appreciate the donation. And yeah, hopefully he's up from here. Obviously, we won that game on the Poch early last season, 3-0 against Luton as well. And then it got shit again after that. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But hey, it's a positive, and it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. All right, like I say, we made those 5 subs. Initially, Neto for Mudryk, Felix for Jackson, then somewhat injury-related. Dewsbury Hall coming on for Caicedo. Again, we didn't have another 6, so that was the only available option we had because Vega couldn't be using 6 because he came on for Cucurella instead. Yeah, we're going to only give Neto and Felix ratings. I don't think the other guys played enough to justify ratings. Pedro Neto got his first goal contributions for Chelsea today with that assist for Joao Felix. A good assist, a nice one. Otherwise, even though I think it was you, Bertram, that made that good point earlier, him being on the pitch, or was it you, Ollie, and just potentially also Wolves, because obviously being his ex-club, them rating him quite highly and maybe being a bit worried about him, that probably helped in and of itself, even though he himself didn't do that much. But the assist was good, 95% passing accuracy. I say 95%. He only misplaced 1 pass, 20 out of 21. And I say that he played the same number of minutes as Mudryk. Neto had 29 touches compared to Mudryk's 13. And Neto had 21 passes compared to Mudryk's 8. So,
so over twice as involved. And that really showed. That really came through, I thought, when Neto did play. Like you mentioned, he dropped down deep quite a lot in order to collect the ball and then cycle and go and run again. I think if we can keep him fit this season, we're in with a really, really good chance, because he's a bit like Madueke off that other side. He's a bit more of a passer than a shooter.
Yeah, no, first of all, I agree. But I know people like, especially Dimitar in that chat, keeps going on about Neto doesn't score goals. But I actually don't mind that. Because we
have a lot of other players who can score goals.
Exactly. We need more players that are good at setting up. Like, we have plenty of ones that score. But I say plenty of ones that score. Obviously, with Jackson, there's still sometimes the clinicalness is lacking a little bit. But there's also still a chance we get someone like Osimhen, who is another one who needs the chance. It's not needs help to score. He needs help getting the ball and getting the chances. And I think that's Neto's best quality, and I think actually I'm happy that we get a player like that.
But
Ollie,
what I was
do you
getting
think
at,
Neto today?
he looked really lively. Getting up and down the pitch a lot like Madueke was. Like in making those defensive contributions, and I think
He's
that really
quick as
mattered.
well. Maybe not Mudryk
He
quick,
is
but he's
quick too, yeah. Like, and so I think that really mattered to the structure that we ended up having in the second half, and I think why we were so dominant as well. Like the whole team looked so much more balanced when he was on the pitch because we were really we not everything was going down the middle or down the right hand side. Like it was a lot more. There was a lot more balance in the way that we tried things when we shift the ball from left to right, and he was a big part of that. I would give Neto a 7. I thought he made a good impact, having only played a half. A good assist as well, really good assist to pick out Joao Felix.
And quite suiting, considering he got the number 7 from Sterling now in his first game with the number 7.
Actually, changed, didn't he?
First game was against but, Conference League qualifiers don't count. But yeah, there you go. Bertrand, would you agree with the 7? What did you make of Neto coming off the bench?
I probably would. I think the first part of it, we didn't really attack down his side, so it's not his fault. But he didn't really. I didn't notice him. I think you could say, in a sense, probably not down to him. I think against Servette as well. I saw a lot of positive, reviews on his performance. I didn't notice him that much, but that might just have been my stream keep cutting out. I think we also do need to remember the fact that when he began getting the ball a lot, the second part of the second half, Wolves were all over the place. So he did have very favorable working conditions, which we do need to remember. But as part of it, he was part of the team who created that. So not going to talk against him. I think he has some very, very interesting qualities. His speed, which you touched upon, he's very, very quick. He's also, I think he comes in some very good positions. I think there are a lot of times, especially, I remember one with Palmer and one with Nkunku toward the end where he was completely free, in a position where Cunha was pretty much exactly and didn't get the ball and looked frustrated for it as well. But I think overall, I'm very, very happy with him. 2 games, he's not injured as of yet. He looks like a very good influence on the team. You could see just how happy the team was as well for his assist, by courtesy of the celebration, which also talks into some good vibes around the team. But a great assist. Maybe he could have had one more with some sharpness, but I thought he looked very lively, and I hope to see more from him. So I think a 7 is more than fair.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree with the 7 as well. I don't have much more to add. I agree with what the boys said. Let's keep it short. Let's keep it simple. On that note, quickly, by the way, the poll for Cucurella's rating out of 10 has gone in favor of a 7 rather than a 6.5, with 69% going for the 7. So, we do enjoy that. And we give Cucurella that 7 that, in my opinion, he does deserve.
He deserves that because of the tweet after the game.
Okay, for sure. If that's the one that clinched it for you, that will do it for me as well. The last player that we give a real rating, obviously Maresca still to come. Joao Felix made his second debut for the club. Ollie, I have to start with you, even though obviously I start with you for the last one. You are very much not a fan of Joao Felix, and when I say that, I don't. Now that he's here, you still support him. You're not a hater,
yeah.
But you were not necessarily. You were not a fan of signing him. You didn't want to sign him after his loan last time out. But I have to say, even though it played 20 minutes today, but that's a good goal. People will say it's a simple finish, blah blah blah.
No, it was a really good finish.
What I love about the finish is how he rifled it. Yeah. I love how
hit
he
the ball with a lot
rifled
of power, and I think it was partly because Neto's ball was actually hit with quite a lot of power as well. So all he really needed to do was side foot it with a little bit of pace, and it was going to fly wherever it went. I thought he placed it really, really well. Took his goal really, really well. Of course, it is Joao Felix. So also when he got the ball in several good positions and had the opportunity to pass to people, he didn't, or he misplaced his pass or he gave it away. This is just one of the things that you have to. It's one of the things you budget for when you have Joao Felix in your team. I thought we weren't pressing as good when he came on. But at the end of the day, he shut me up.
Hyped him up by then,
and he shut me up because he's come on and he scored, doesn't he? So I said before the game I thought he would score today, just because the universe doesn't like me at the moment. But yeah, I am pleased to see him score a good goal for Chelsea. And I hope it's not the start of his 4 goals that he gets annually. I hope he gets more than that this year.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, all he really needs to do is not hit the woodwork, because if he hit the woodwork as many times in his last Chelsea spell as he scored. So, if he just scores instead of hitting the woodwork, would have had 8 goals and everyone would have been buzzing about that, really, in those 5 months that he was here for. But yeah, I mean, even when you look at it, and I'll come to you. Actually, Oli, give me a rating for Joao Felix with the star, though, because obviously Neto got a full half like Mudryk, so he got a full rating.
I'll give him a 6. Really good goal. Other than that, I don't know, flattered to deceive a little bit with some of the more attacking play, but maybe that's a little harsh.
Yeah, all right. Just to quickly go through some stats, even like he played 22 minutes compared to Mudryk's 45. Now, obviously, more central, so therefore a position that's a bit more involved, but even still, compared to Mudryk's 8 passes in a half, Joao Felix had 12 passes in 22 minutes, 9 of which successful. He also had 17 touches compared to Mudryk's 13 in more than double the minutes. Had a successful dribble. He had 2 successful ground duels out of 2, so that's pretty good going. And supposedly his goal was only an XG of 0.19. So I'm surprised at that, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's also why we officially lost on XG stat, because for some reason they give that goal only a 0.19, sorry. But yeah, now for me, I think as a sub, even though I know what you're saying, I will also give him a 7. Let's see what Bertram says, of course, because I'm like, I don't think Neto did that much more than Felix did. But Felix did the more difficult part. The scoring part is easier than the laying it off part for me. But I still know what you mean. There was a moment where he could have laid it off, but I'm also like, it's his debut. Madueke already had a hat-trick. We were 6-2 up. I don't mind. In those situations, I don't mind being a bit selfish and trying to get another goal. I get it. I don't mind in that case. Bertram, what did you make of Felix? What did you make of the goal? And what rating with the star as a sub would you give him?
But this was my favorite goal of the whole day, to be honest. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was shades of the goal he scored against Bournemouth when we had him. So happy to see him score. I love him as a player. I think when you watch him play, there's just so much quality. I think he might, in a sense, be a bit frustrating to play with, because there were a lot of times when he had players open, when he just, flicked it around someone or got a free kick. But, sometimes you kind of need these X-Factor players to just get us off our seats. I thought it was a very, very clinical finish. You would have expected him to score it. If he hadn't scored it, we would have criticized him for it. But nevertheless, he did. So I think if we're giving, I'd almost give him a 7.5. I thought it was very, very good, very influential. He could have done more, of course, but for on your second debut for your club to be subbed in, to make that run, to have that finish, and just overall, I thought he looked very good, very lively. I also like the first thing that happened when he came on was he got absolutely clattered by one of the Wolves players, absolutely kicked on his leg, and then just immediately got up, which I thought was fair. So I think hopefully it's a different version of the player that we said bites you a bit more clinical, as you touched upon, because it seemed like every time he shot the ball, it had magnets, so it hit toward the post and the crossbar. But I think I'd almost give him a 7.5 for today's performance. I thought he was very, very good, very lively.
Fair dues. Well, if you give him a 7.5, then it is most certainly an overall 7. Otherwise, it would have been a 6.5. So there you go. Not much more to say. And let's finish it off. Like Nkunku, Dewsbury Hall, and Vega, I don't think any of them played enough to justify a rating. So let's move on and finish it off with a rating for the manager himself, Enzo Maresca. What do we make of him? Bertram, why don't I let you go first? First half wasn't that great. Whatever he changed at halftime, by the way, I told you guys I did ask Connor, you guys know him, the Mr. Tactico himself. I asked him, can you give me a quick explanation of what Maresca changed at halftime? He said, sorry, bro, only just seen this. He only replied like 20 minutes later. It's fine, Connor. He says, but this was mainly the tempo to slow things down until in a settled shape, rather than losing the ball and being caught during the rotations. First half too quick. So what I think he's essentially saying, because obviously we play in different shapes, on the ball and off the ball, when we win the ball and then we play forward too quickly without having adjusted to our attacking on the ball shape, then we are not as good at keeping the ball because people aren't all in the areas where they need to be. And I think there's a very good, very well explained by Connor, and I think that's kind of goes back to what we discussed at the very beginning of the stream, that the first half had hints of Poch, and that I think that is exactly it, that we just played forward too quickly, which can work and allows you to get good goals in some occasions, like it allowed us on the Poch last season. But it also, if you give the ball away in those moments when you're trying to transition yourself, then yourself are out of shape and not really ready to lose the ball again, and you get encountered. And I think kind of that's what happened in the first half. And Maresca found a way to make them stop that in the second half. And it was very noticeable quite quickly in the second half. Sure, we scored again quite quickly, but still, I thought it was quite noticeable how much more control we had. Like, we just didn't rush it as much. All of a sudden, we kept the ball. All of a sudden, we kept Wolves quiet. All of a sudden, we scored goal after goal after goal. No, sure, things went our way a little bit. We won't, like, if we play that same game again, chances are we don't score 6 goals. But still,
we probably win 3-1 instead of 6-2.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, we still win, but we probably don't score quite as many, like you say. But I still think overall, the manager did a good job. The manager did a good job. Made a halftime sub. It always annoys me when we have a bit of a bad first half, and then they don't. Sure, they have a halftime team talk, but I'm like, just add one player already, like one sub. Why not? Just use it. Like, why? Sure, Mudryk had a particularly bad game, so it was an easy decision in that case. But still, so many times managers, whether that was Poch, whether that was Tuchel, whether that is God knows who else, should have made halftime subs and don't. He did. It changed things, not just that halftime sub. Whatever he said at halftime clearly did his thing as well. Brought Felix on. He scores a goal as well. Leaves Madueke out for 2 games. Probably ignites a bit of a fire in that. Also spoke in the post-match press conference about not mentioning Madueke, but saying, if you don't play Sunday and you just think you're automatically going to play Thursday, but then don't train properly between Sunday and Thursday, you're not playing. And I think that's what Madueke got to experience on Thursday. I think his example of the way he said that, for me, must have been about Noni. Noni must have just not had a good few days of training. Didn't start against Servette. Came on, though. Scored a good goal. Got the rewards for that. Probably trained better since. Gets the start. Scores a hat-trick. And okay, against Servette now, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it will be rotated again. But I'm very sure the next week against Palace, Madueke will start again. Because, how can you not start him again after what he did today? So I think Maresca did a fantastic job overall. Sure, you can maybe have a few questions about the first half, but I'm like, we're still only just over a month into working under this new manager. Let's not forget, it's only Maresca's second ever Premier League game. So I think with all of that said, I'm going to give him an 8. Would have been high if the first half was already a bit better. Maybe I could even do 8.5, but I think an 8 is very good. And I'm very happy with what I saw today. Ollie, what would you give Maresca? And what do you make from a managerial point of view? And also, what did you make of Connor's explanation of what he thinks changed at halftime?
Yeah, I like Connor's explanation. It makes sense that when we actually slowed down a little bit, we actually improved quite a lot. I think last season with Pochettino, we really leaned in to the chaos, and we really leaned into, like, just having that kind of basketball style of play. And it's interesting to see Maresca kind of pulling the reins a little bit, like holding the reins and saying, actually, no, not everything needs to be 100 million miles an hour. I still think that Neto coming on probably offered more balance on that side as well, and that helped us in the build-up because, as I said, I thought there always seemed to be an extra man there in midfield that just wasn't there in the first half. Maybe that's because they were more settled in their shape. It was just easier to move the ball around. But generally speaking, you can't really ask for much more from Maresca. We've gone out there. He's picked arguably the strongest lineup he could have picked, more or less. We score 2 goals in the first half. We go 1-0 up after less than 2 minutes. It's 2-2 at halftime, but we've played all right. We've done pretty well. Maresca knew exactly what the issue was, and he knew how to solve it. And we scored 4 goals in the second half. Like, no matter which way that you slice it, he's done a really good job there. Any game where you score 6 has to be a credit to the manager. So for me, I think I'd even give him a 9. I was really impressed with the way he switched things around. Like, because it seemed that such a subtle change made such a big difference, and because of that, I was really impressed by him recognizing that a subtle change would do that.
But dudes, can I just quickly get your reaction to Ian? Sorry that I'm making you react to Puzzled Live TV again. But he's very active in the chat today. And he said first half was undeniably terrible, and Maresca chose that team. I'm still not 1,000%.
Depends how you feel about
it was undeniably terrible, in my opinion.
I think it depends how you feel about Wolves, doesn't it? Like, Wolves is a team where we've gone to them a lot in the last 5 years and not won a lot.
Exactly.
You know, like,
With
and certainly not blowing them
many
out like we
managers
did
and many
today.
players.
You know, like I remember my dad was at the Molineux, I think, on the Christmas Eve game last season. That absolutely diabolical, horrible game. And so I think we've got to remember that Wolves aren't the easiest team for us, it seems, but today we made it look easy.
100%. Maybe taking their best player helped.
Maybe.
I mean,
So part of the
you know,
strategy. Just have to do that with every other team.
exactly. How do you think Bayern won 12 Bundesliga titles in a row? Do you know what I mean? Basham, an 8 from me from Maresca, although I do see Ollie's point to go a tad high. I think 9 is a bit too high, but 8.5 I think I can absolutely go on board with. What would you give Maresca today? What did you make of also Connor's explanation of how things got better in the second half? And also, like, do you then put it down on it that the first half wasn't that good, therefore you take points away from the manager? Or is it more about, okay, you started the game, you adapted though, and made sure you got better?
I think it's a lot of the same things that I said with Caicedo. Obviously know Caicedo's quality, so the bad half is something that's not usual to him. So him being able to
and also
come out
if
much
Lavia is
better.
fit, who knows what team is picked? By the way, does he pick Enzo, Lavia, and Caicedo again, or does Lavia? I think if Lavia is fit, Caicedo doesn't start today because Caicedo started the last two and was captain against Servette. I think then Caicedo might have got a rest today if Lavia was fit, but I'm purely guessing.
You might be correct in that, and then maybe we would have had more control. But I think sometimes you also need to respect the fact that there are two teams on the field. So as bad as we were, I think a lot of it was down to the tactics from Wolves. I think they read us well. So sometimes you can say that we were bad, but I think Wolves were as well good, and him being able to change tactically during the half was very impressive and something we didn't see often last season. How many times did we go into halftime, we played badly, or we played well, and we'd expect Poch to do nothing or wait late for subs or something. So I thought him being able to change that quickly and that drastically as well really helped us. As for what Connor said, I think realistically it would make sense. I didn't see it because I don't have a degree in tactics, supposedly, but I think the fact that we were that much better in the second half really showed. And as for people saying he picked the team, well, he also picked a team that in the end pretty much was 5-2 up. So
yeah, at the end of the day, he picked a team that scored 6 goals today.
Exactly. So I think that needs to go on as well. I think an 8.5 is more than fair. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't become a theme that he starts off tactically not well in games, but is able to pick it up. You'd hope that from the start of game, he's tactically thorough. But
you'd rather it that way round, though, wouldn't you? Like you
would that he's able to react. Because in the end it did give us the win. But I think for today, very very impressive. So an 8.5 is what you'd give him.
Very good. Yeah, I think maybe I would have even gone up to an 8.5 from my 8, but overall that doesn't change anything, and it leaves us with an 8.5. And I think, hey, now sure, the opening game wasn't that great. We lost 2-0 against City. Some people thought it was worse. Some people thought it was a bit better. Whichever way you thought of it, the next 2 games of the season we won them against Servette. Sure, it could have been a tad better. Still got the dub in the end. And today, 6 goals. As much as we still conceded 2. 6 goals, there's not much to complain about. And like Ollie touched on earlier, I think it's kind of relevant to highlight. Sure, Wolves, not that great, blah, blah, blah. But whatever they are, great or not great, we lost to them twice last season. And we lost to them many times over the last few years. Whether we had Thomas Tuchel in charge, whether we had bloody Potter in charge, no matter who we had in charge, we basically lost to Wolves. Even Lampard wasn't just after Potter got sacked. Wasn't Wolves away Lampard's first game in that little interim spell?
We lost 1-0.
Yeah, exactly. Where we also lost, where Joao Felix was playing left wing, and all sorts of weird things were happening.
And no one was midfield.
Right wing that day.
Yeah, we had no midfield.
Exactly.
But and it's interesting actually that you talk a bit about last season, Loz, because I don't think other than I think you can say the game we played last season in the cup against Middlesbrough, I don't think we've battered anybody like that in a while. Like in terms of the performance and the goals and everything else, like the whole belt and britches and the whole 9 yards. We played really well today.
West Ham, Everton, maybe toward the end of the season.
Maybe,
but they didn't have anything to play for, which is also a point.
Yeah, and so I feel like this is the first time in a while where we've gone up in a competitive game against a competitive team where actually recent statistics would show that they would beat us. and we've not only gone and beaten them, we've absolutely battered them as well. So
Away
it's
from
good
home as
signs.
well.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's important to focus on those positives, right? Like all of us have criticized many things about the club, whether it's about how we treated certain players, how we sold certain players, how we're dealing with certain situations, whether we think it's the right strategy to buy quite as many players as we do, blah, 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 whatever way you think of it and you look at it. But I genuinely try to almost separate Chelsea on the pitch and Chelsea off the pitch, because I think the people on the pitch, they deserve full and unwavering support. The people off the pitch do not, and you can question their decisions and whatever. But the people on the pitch, these young players aren't at fault that they're young players and have been signed. All of the players in the squad aren't at fault that we have so many players in the squad. Maresca isn't at fault for him being an inexperienced manager and being chosen to be the next Chelsea manager. Sure, you can say he could have said no to the job offer, but obviously he's not going to do that. You know what I mean? I still remember years ago when some people had a go at Lampard, that he took the job when he was offered it. I'm like, are you an idiot? Like, of course he's going to take the job. He's going to fucking offer it. I mean, you get paid millions to coach the team you love. Who on earth would ever say no to that?
It'd be like tomorrow, if somebody just rocked up to Loz's door and was like, you know what, Loz, I would want you to be CEO of Apple. You're like, you're not going to turn that down, even though you don't know how to run a company.
Even if I have no clue what I'm doing, I'll take it. If they sack me, hey, I'm getting a nice payout. Do you know what I mean? Worth it in the long run, no matter what happens. So it's So big up. I'm very, very happy. I'm gonna take all the positives from this one. So very, very pleased. Ollie, thank you very much for joining me. Please do, ladies and gentlemen, please do check out Ollie's podcast. At the Bridge Podcast, link is down in the description, as well as Ollie's Twitter, Ollie J Carpenter. He hasn't got it on screen today, but the links are down in the description as always. Do check out Pice as well on Pice.
Check out Pice too.
Yeah, do check out Pice too. We brought a couple of tweets up of his, so shout out Pice. Check out Bertram's Twitter, is what I wanted to say. It's still one of my favorite Twitter handles. Won it twice. As much as it's private, he doesn't use it all the time. If you click follow, I'm sure he will accept. And Bertram every now and again does say something interesting, so do check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't done that just yet, please be sure to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers still. Slowed down a little bit, but hey, we're grinding slowly but surely. We're doing our thing. So hey, if you haven't just done that just yet, hit that subscribe button, like the video and the stream for me. That would be massively appreciated. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Upwards and onwards. Don't need to be saying backwards and downwards today. Up the Chelsea, and we will see you next time.